Chapter 657. Number 1 Suspect Master Qin had already given Bao Fan his bottom line, so there was nothing Bao Fan wouldn't dare to do. The Shui family and the Gu family were originally enemies who would not rest until one of them died. The two families had been fighting openly and secretly for so many years, so he was not afraid of adding some new hatred to the old. Moreover, after he came back, the Shui family and the Gu family provoked him one after another. They really looked down on the Qin family and were a bit too unscrupulous. If he did not fight back, he would be a bit stupid. Moreover, this was also a lesson for them, warning them to be sensible. Otherwise, they would be serious next time. Bao Fan had been watching Shui Ku and Gu Yongning for several days, looking for opportunities. When he knew that they were having fun in the nightclub tonight, Bao Fan immediately made a decision. Everything about this Honda CR-V was very clean, and the identity of the drunk driver was even more innocent. There was absolutely no mistake. Even if this car did not hit Shui Ku and Gu Yongning's car, it would be hit by other cars at the next intersection. For this reason, Bao Fan had made 3 preparations, and he was determined to win. The Honda CR-V ran the red light head-on. Even if the driver was immortal, it would be difficult for him to avoid it. He could only watch the out-of-control Honda CR-V crash into him. Shui Ku and Gu Yongning, who were already drunk, were also awakened by the driver's sudden scream. When they saw the out-of-control Honda CR-V, they were instantly dumbfounded. Their minds went blank and they lost all space to think. There was only one thought in their minds: it's over. Bang! An ear-piercing crash resounded through the night sky. The other drivers on the road were startled and looked over at the same time. The two cars collided. The Honda CR-V knocked the Porsche Panamera several meters away, and the side of the car was more than half protruding. 3 people in the car, including the driver, were directly knocked out. The airbag also popped up at the same time. The drunk driver in the Honda CR-V also completely passed out. However, the Honda CR-V was not fast, so this was a controlled car accident. There would definitely be no deaths, but the injuries of both sides could not be controlled. Soon, the traffic police arrived in time, followed by the ambulance. The rest was a matter of procedure. Bao Fan did not sleep the entire night, waiting for the news. After confirming that the plan was complete, Bao Fan pursed his lips and smiled. This was just the beginning, there were more exciting things to come. In the hospital, Qin Sheng did not sleep, because the doctor told him that tonight was the most dangerous time. If he could get through it, he would be fine. If not, he had to be prepared. Since yesterday, Hao Lei's body had shown signs of rejection. The doctors of the expert group had been busy the whole day, and Qin Sheng had not left the hospital at all. Therefore, when Qin Sheng received Bao Fan's call, he did not go to sleep. Before this, Bao Fan did not tell Qin Sheng about the specific implementation of the plan. He only told Qin Sheng what had happened after the plan was completed. After Qin Sheng heard this, he asked calmly, "No lives will be lost?" It was not that Qin Sheng did not dare to act recklessly. It was just that he had to be cautious now. He could not add fuel to the fire of the Qin family. Otherwise, the Qin family would be forced to face the counterattack of the Shui family and the Gu family. Within a controllable range, there won't be any problems. The driver is clean, no matter what they do, they won't be able to trace it back to us. Don't worry, Bao Fan replied confidently. If he could not do this, he would have wasted his time in Shanghai. Qin Sheng nodded and said, "Okay, that's good. Next, I'll wait for the news from the Yan family." After hanging up the phone, Qin Sheng walked out of the ICU and went to the entrance of the ICU. He looked at Hao Lei, who was still unconscious, through the window and said, "Brother, don't worry, none of them will be able to escape." At dawn, Han Bing had arrived at the hospital early. Qin Sheng had told her the specific situation yesterday, so she stayed until the wee hours before going back. After sleeping for a few hours, she hurried to the hospital again. At this moment, the two of them were standing at the entrance of the ICU ward, waiting for the doctor to come out. When the doctor came out, the two of them instantly became nervous. They did not even dare to breathe loudly. They stared at the doctor, waiting for the result. Looking at the two of them who were so nervous, the doctor smiled and said slowly, "The critical period is over. He can be transferred to the general ward. He should wake up in another 2 days. The next step is to slowly recuperate. If he wants to fully recover, it may take a year." Qin Shing and Han Bing did not listen to the doctor's words at all. Just hearing the words, "the critical period is over," they were already overwhelmed with joy. Qin Shing let out a long sigh of relief, completely relieved. Han Bing's face was full of tears. The pressure during this period was completely released. She subconsciously hugged Qin Shing and sobbed softly. Qin Shing patted her back and comforted her. "It's okay, it's okay." At this moment, in the mansion of Thompson First Class, Yen Chaozong had just woken up. The nanny had already prepared breakfast. When he came out, he did not expect Feng He to be sitting in the living room. This made him a little surprised. "Feng He came so early, did something happen?" Yen Chaozong, who had just taken a shower, did not bother to change his clothes. He walked straight over and said in a deep voice, "What happened?" "Young master, at 3 o'clock last night, Xue Ku and Gu Yongning got into a car accident after drinking at Tinexex," Feng He tried to tell Yen Chaozong in a very calm tone. Yen Chaozong's face changed instantly. What? He did not expect to hear such explosive news as soon as he woke up. This was 2F** king exciting. It made him completely awake in an instant. Feng He continued, "Now they just came out of the hospital and went to the Gu family's villa in Xishan to recuperate. Except for Xue Ku's moderate concussion, the others are not serious, but they still need to rest for a period of time." "That's good." After listening, Yen Chaozong said quietly, "Did you find out who did it?" Feng He answered truthfully, "The driver who caused the accident was drunk. He ran the red light and lost control of the car. The identity of the person who caused the accident is very ordinary, there is nothing special. But now they are still investigating, we have to wait for the specific result." This is Qin Sheng's counterattack. Yen Chaozong did not wait for Feng He to finish and directly concluded. He did not believe that this was just an accident, it could not be an accident. Moreover, during this period of time, they had been watching Qin Sheng. Except for Qin Sheng, who was still in the hospital looking after his best brother, Hao Lei, the others seemed to have suddenly disappeared. Was there really nothing fishy? Besides, such a big thing happened, wouldn't Qin Sheng suspect them? If they really found out that they did it, wouldn't they take revenge? Everything had to be prepared for the worst, so that they could nip it in the bud. Since Qin Sheng dared to touch Xue Ku and Gu Yongning, why wouldn't he dare to touch him, the direct mastermind behind the scenes? Therefore, Yen Chaozong felt that it was better to be careful. Feng He frowned and said, "Young master, how can you be sure that this was done by Qin Sheng? If this is just an accident, then it's nothing. If it is not an accident, do you think there is anyone else in Shanghai besides Qin Sheng who has the possibility and courage to do this?" Yen Chaozong squinted and said. Feng He thought about it and felt that it was true. He then asked, "Then what should we do next?" Yen Chaozong said casually, "We should be careful these days. Don't take the initiative to get into trouble. Let them fight each other first, we will show up in the end. By the way, have those people been arranged?" Feng He laughed and said, "Young master, don't worry. I've handed it over to Gu Xiaobo and arranged for them to hide in Chongming Island. No one will find them." "Well, that's good. Later, come with me to see Xue Ku and the others," Yen Chaozong said casually. This was the most basic etiquette. Moreover, he really wanted to see how these domineering rich playboys looked like. It was interesting just thinking about it. In the purple garden of Xishan, Xue Ku and Gu Yongning, who had been frightened last night, had just returned to the villa. Su Bin, Gao Shi, and the two beauties who took care of Xueku and Gu Yongning were with them. Xueku and Gu Yongning were in a terrible state at the moment. Xueku's head was wrapped in bandages, and there were a few abrasions on his face with band-aids. Gu Yongning was in a similar state. Although there was no bandage on his head, his legs and arms were badly injured, and it hurt a little. Xueku was so angry that he couldn't bear to look at them. Xueku's head was wrapped in bandages, and there were a few abrasions on his face with band-aids. Gu Yongning was in a similar state. Although there was no bandage on his head, his legs and arms were badly injured, and it hurt a little. Gu Yongning was relatively calm, but his heart was still full of anger. If someone wanted to kill them last night, they would probably be separated by life and death. It could be said that they had a brush with death. Fortunately, the drunk driver's speed was not very fast. The man in charge of this matter said nervously, "We are continuing to investigate, but there is no problem with the current information. The man is just an ordinary office worker. Last night, after getting drunk with his friends, he insisted on driving home. He even quarreled with his friends for a while. There is no problem with the route home." F***ck, I don't believe it, Xueku replied directly. Gao Shi squinted and said, "Old Xue, you mean that someone did it on purpose? Who do you think it was? Qin Sheng?" Xueku replied, "Other than him, I really can't think of anyone else." Motherf***. After the car accident last night, and thinking of the incident some time ago, Xueku felt that he was really unlucky recently. What had happened to him? At this time, Gu Yongning replied, "If it is not an accident, then it can only be Qin Sheng, so we can only wait for the information." Gu Yongning and Yan Chaozong had the same thought. They both listed Qin Sheng as the number one suspect. Su Bin echoed, "Brother Ning is right, this is the only possibility. Let's wait for Yan Chaozong to come and discuss the details. As for the movement on Qin Sheng's side, he must know more than us," Gu Yongning said with a gloomy look. Therefore, the contradiction between the two sides was almost open. No matter what the result was, the spearhead was pointed at each other. However, Qin Sheng could not care about them at this time. Bao Fan was the first heavy bomb, and Chang Baji was preparing the second one. Chapter 658. I'll go to Shanghai. Interestingly, Dr. Xue and Gu Yongning also went to Ruijin Hospital last night, but it was Luan branch of Ruijin Hospital. If they went to Ruijin Hospital, they might meet Qin Sheng, who was already in Ruijin Hospital at this moment. Hao Lei finally passed the critical period. The next step was to wait for him to wake up and recuperate. Qin Sheng could also go to do other things. He couldn't stay in the hospital all the time. Only Han Bing was left in the hospital. She also found 2 aunties and 2 bodyguards to accompany Hao Lei. Qin Sheng could rest assured that Hao Lei would be safe in the hospital. In Ruijin Hospital, Qin Sheng accompanied his grandmother. The old lady's complexion had recovered a lot. She could get out of bed and walk around. Wu Yajun would accompany her to take a walk outside every day. Otherwise, the old lady would ask to go back. The doctor dared not let her leave the ward now. After all, her condition had just stabilized. They had to observe her body every day. The most important thing was that her condition was suppressed by medication. Once the medication was stopped, there would be an accident. Zhu Qingwen came almost every day, sometimes in the morning and sometimes at night. Wu Yajun, her daughter-in-law, worked hard without complaint. She had already lost weight, but she never complained. Fortunately, there were caregivers with her, so she was not very tired. After all, Wu Yajun was older. At first, the old lady complained that Qin Sheng did not come recently. But when she saw her grandson who looked extremely tired, she did not complain. Instead, she asked Qin Sheng if he did not have a good rest, did not eat well, or was too busy, and so on. Finally, all the complaints were transferred to Qin Chang'an. But the old lady did not say it out. She muttered in her heart that Qin Chang'an had tortured his grandson like this. Therefore, Qin Chang'an was inexplicably the scapegoat again. Anyway, he was used to it. He had never been treated well by the old lady for so many years. Qin Chang'an learned about the old lady's hospitalization from Qin Ran. Although he was busy with things in Beijing, Qin Chang'an still took the initiative to go to Shanghai to visit the old lady. But he did not come directly, because the old lady did not agree. Therefore, Qin Chang'an called Zhu Qingwen first and asked a few questions tentatively. Unexpectedly, Zhu Qingwen directly refused and said that he would talk about it when the old lady was better. Qin Chang'an had to give up. Qin Xing did not look very good. No matter how good his body was, he was still an ordinary person, not a steel machine. After working hard for a long time and eating and resting irregularly, he would naturally be tired. When Qin Sheng was about to leave, Zhu Qingwen happened to come over. She came over earlier today because she had nothing to do, so she came over early to accompany the old lady so that her sister-in-law could have a rest. Recently, Zhu Qingwen had pushed away almost everything. Other than going to Fudan University to attend classes, she stayed in the hospital. Her life was a lot more peaceful. When Qin Sheng was about to leave, Zhu Qingwen said that she was going out to buy something, so she walked with Qin Sheng for a while. She took the initiative to ask, "Sheng are you in trouble? You don't look too good." Since Qin Sheng had chatted with Zhu Weiguo and Zhu Changshun last time, he had known the bottom line and principles of the Zhu family. Consequently, he would not tell Zhu Qingwen about what had happened this time. He smiled and said, "Small aunt, I'm fine. I've been working overtime recently. I want to finish my business in Shanghai as soon as possible, so I'm a bit tired." Zhu Qingwen asked again, "Are you sure?" "Yes, I'm fine," Qin Sheng replied affirmatively again. Since Qin Sheng was unwilling to tell her, Zhu Qingwen did not intend to ask further. However, it did not mean that she did not care about Qin Sheng. She had been keeping an eye on Qin Sheng, just like Qin Chang'an. Once the Yan family or the other two families made any trouble, Zhu Qingwen would selectively take action. After Qin Sheng got in the car and left, Zhu Qingwen turned around and walked back. She sighed and roughly guessed the reason. She guessed that the last conversation had made Qin Sheng unwilling to tell her these things. On his way to the company, Qin Sheng received a call from Song Ryu. During the days when Hao Lei was in trouble, Song Ryu had called him several times, saying that she and her best friend wanted to invite Qin Sheng to dinner. She did not know when Qin Sheng would be free. Qin Sheng did not answer the first two calls. When the call went through for the last time, Qin Sheng politely refused, saying that he had been busy recently and that he would talk to her when he was free. Song Ryu did not say anything. She only smiled and nodded. Qin Sheng did not contact her again until she returned to Beijing. Song Ryu was somewhat disappointed. This time, she took the initiative to call Qin Sheng because she had met Sister Qin Ran at noon. They chatted happily and talked about some of Qin Sheng's things in Shanghai, so Song Ryu cared about Qin Sheng. They chatted casually for a while. Song Ryu asked when Qin Sheng would return to Beijing. She still owed him a meal. Qin Sheng said that he would go back after he was free and that he would charge her a big meal. Song Ryu called Qin Sheng in the Sihiyuan of the old master. The old master had just gone to bed and was sitting in the yard in a daze. The weather in Beijing was gloomy today. It seemed that a heavy rain would come unexpectedly. The wind was blowing, which made people feel cool. After all, it was summer. At this time, Song Husheng appeared out of nowhere. He walked slowly to Song Ryu and said, "What are you thinking about? You look like a love-struck fool." Song Ryu rolled her eyes at Song Husheng and said, "You are the love-struck fool. Is Grandpa asleep?" Song Husheng asked casually. Of course, he knew the old master's work and rest habits. Today, he mainly came to see Song Ryu. Song Ryu nodded and said, "Aren't you busy these days?" Why do you have time to visit Grandpa? No matter how busy I am, I have to visit Grandpa. Moreover, my most lovely and beautiful sister is back. How can I not come? Song Hushing said half-jokingly. He had a kind of elegant temperament, which made people feel that he was calm and wise. No wonder so many people had high hopes for him. Song Ryu curled her lips, but she was quite happy. This brother of hers had been very good to her since she was a child, and always protected her. Although they always quarreled, they were very close to each other. Let me tell you something happy. Song Hushing suddenly changed the topic. Song Ryu asked curiously, what is it? When in Shanghai, didn't Shui-ku and Gu Yongning bully you and your best friend? Last night in Shanghai they had a car accident and were badly injured. It was karma, Song Hushing said slowly. He had been told this by someone on the phone at noon. Song Ryu was very unhappy and said, Did you do it? Although she had explained to Song Hushing on the phone that day that she did not want to get involved in too many things, she also knew her brother's temper. If she really provoked him, he would definitely take revenge. Song Hushing sneered and said, I'm not that bored. But what happened that night will not end like this. When they go back to Beijing, I will settle the score with them. Brother, don't mess around. It was really nothing that night. I was not angry. Why are you angry? Song Ryu was relieved when she heard that it had nothing to do with Song Hushing, but she was still worried about him. Song Ryu was sitting on the swing. Song Hushing had nothing to do, so he helped her push the swing. Then he said, You are used to standing aloof from worldly affairs. Maybe nothing matters in your eyes, but I can't. But don't you want to ask who had anything to do with their car accident? Song Ryu originally wanted to refute, but she was attracted by Song Hushing's words. Obviously, there was a hidden meaning in his words. She asked, What do you mean? Who had something to do with it? I have absolutely reliable news. I quoted an authoritative person close to Shui-ku and Gu Yongning. He said that it had something to do with Qin Xing, Song Hushing said truthfully. It had to be said that Song Hushing had a powerful network. He had gotten the first-hand news so quickly. Song Ryu was subconsciously stunned for a moment when she heard that it had something to do with Qin Xing. She frowned and said, How could it have something to do with Qin Xing? Song Hushing shrugged. He was not interested in these trivial things. He just explained, the Qin family, the Shui family, and the Gu family are like fire and water. You definitely don't know this. The elders of the Qin family fought fiercely in the past. These years they have been in conflict constantly. So it is normal that the juniors can't even get along with each other. Song Ryu thought of what had happened that night. It seemed that she could understand what Song Hushing was talking about. It was just that she really didn't know about those old grudges. No wonder Qin Xing had been so impulsive that night. It turned out that the two sides had been enemies for a long time. Song Ryu thought that Qin Xing had been busy these days. Could it have something to do with these people? She was somewhat worried and asked, Is Qin Xing okay? Song Hushing said in a strange tone, Wow, nothing happened. You're already helping an outsider. I thought you were not worried about anything. It turns out that there is something else you are worried about. Song Hushing, can't you speak properly? Song Ryu said somewhat angrily. Song Hushing quickly put away his cynical look, fearing that he would really make Song Ryu angry. He said very seriously, Qin Xing is fine. But something happened to one of his friends. I don't know how it happened. Anyway, it took Qin Xing 10 hours to save his life in the hospital a few days ago. Qin Xing has been in the hospital recently. I don't know what's going on now. But an authoritative person said that it might have something to do with Shui-ku and Gu Yongning. After Song Hushing finished speaking, Song Ryu instantly became nervous. She finally understood why Qin Xing had not answered her calls at the beginning. Later, when Qin Xing had answered the call, he had said that he was very busy. At that time, she could hear that Qin Xing's voice was a little tired. So that was what had happened. That night when you were in Shanghai, when Qin Sheng went to pick you up, he had a conflict with Shui Ku and Gu Yongning and even fought with them. You know all about this. Based on those people's tempers and wits, how could they tolerate it? So they guessed that what happened to Qin Sheng's friend was their revenge, and that the car accident between Shui Ku and Gu Yongning was Qin Sheng's revenge. This is going to be a drama, Song Husheng said as if he was watching a drama. Anyway, he did not like both sides, so he could do whatever he wanted. Moreover, this matter had not been put on the table. It was just everyone's guess. If it was really put on the table, it would be interesting because then the elders should come forward. At this time, Song Ruyu did not care about these things anymore, because she had fallen into deep self-blame. She subconsciously took all the responsibility. If what Song Husheng said was true, then it was really her fault. If she had not asked Qin Sheng to pick her up that night, there would not have been a conflict between them. If there had not been a conflict between them, Qin Sheng's friend would not have been in the hospital, and these things would not have happened. Therefore, Song Ryu said directly, "Tell Grandpa that I'm going to Shanghai." After saying that, Song Ryu stood up and hurried out without even taking her bag. Song Husheng was shocked. He did not expect that Song Ryu would have such a big reaction. Chapter 659. Song Husheng was just an onlooker. Although the Qin family and the Song family had been friends for generations and Qin Chanan had helped them a lot when he had just started his business, that was many years ago. As Qin Chanan's business grew bigger and bigger, the Song family gradually kept a distance from the Qin family. The old master had a good sense of direction in this regard. This sense of distance did not mean that they were estranged. It was just that they did not have too much involvement with the Qin family in some matters. Even so, there were still rumors about the relationship between the Qin family and the Song family, which was inevitable. The Song family and the Qin family took different paths. As the Qin family's business got bigger and bigger, the Song family had to keep a distance from the Qin family. Otherwise, the younger generations of the Song family would face more resistance if they went further. Moreover, the old master was so old that he didn't want to be stained with any stains. The second generation of the Song family didn't have any great achievements. The old master put all his hopes on the third generation. While he was still alive, he wanted to help them take a few more steps. Then he would take a few more steps. Therefore, the old master had not said anything about the Qin family until now. Moreover, the relationship of the interest group represented by the Qin family was too complicated, which had long been beyond the old master's control. Naturally, the old master would not get involved in it. Therefore, the Song family and the Qin family could only be said to be friends of gentlemen. They had contacts but no interest. The two members of the second generation of the Song family did not have much contact with Qin Chang'an, especially after the marriage between Song Husheng and Qin Ran failed. The relationship between Song Husheng and Qin Ran was a bit complicated. Song Husheng liked Qin Ran at first, but Qin Ran never considered marriage. Song Husheng finally stayed away and did not have much contact with Qin Ran. Song Ryu was more familiar with Qin Ran, and now she was closer to Qin Sheng. When the matter of the Qin family became more and more serious, Song Husheng felt lucky that he did not get together with Qin Ran. Otherwise, the Song family would have to get involved even if they did not want to. He and the Qin family could only be tied together. If something happened to the Qin family, his future would basically be ruined. Therefore, after knowing the old master's thoughts, Song Husheng naturally did not want his sister to have anything to do with Qin Sheng. It was estimated that the entire Song family, except for the old master, had such thoughts. However, old master was determined to keep his promise, and no one in the Song family could do anything about it. Most importantly, Song Ryu was also inclined to do so. This gave Song Husheng a huge headache. Fortunately, after what happened in Shanghai, Song Husheng learned a lot of things, especially that thing, which made him feel very lucky, because he knew his sister very well. If his sister knew about it, she would definitely cut off all contact with Qin Sheng. If his grandfather knew about it, he would not stop them at all. Of course, Song Husheng had to stop Song Ryu from going to Shanghai. He hurriedly ran out and grabbed Song Ryu, saying, "Ryu, what are you doing? What does it have to do with you? It's just a grudge between them. Don't force yourself to take the blame." Song Ryu insisted, "But if it hadn't happened that night, they wouldn't have quarreled like this. It has something to do with me." "I think you're worried about Qin Sheng," Song Husheng said angrily. Song Ryu said calmly, "It has nothing to do with me. But it's all because of me. If I don't show up, do you think it's the right thing to do?" Song Husheng was about to blurt out that thing, but he suddenly changed his mind. He felt that if he took the initiative to say it, it would not be as shocking as Song Ryu seeing it with her own eyes or hearing it from her own mouth. Therefore, Song Husheng snorted and said, "Fine. Go ahead." Song Ryu felt that Song Husheng was a little strange today, but she could not tell what was strange about him. She stared at Song Husheng for a while, and finally turned around and walked into the Sihiyuan. Song Husheng was a little surprised. "You're giving up so soon?" Song Ryu stared at him and said, "Who said that?" "I'm going back to get my bag. My ID card and cell phone are still in it." Song Husheng was speechless. Sometimes, this sister of his really made him feel helpless, but he could not deny that this sister was too outstanding, even more outstanding than him. In the future, her achievements might not be lower than his. Therefore, Song Husheng had always thought that no man could match up to his sister, at least not yet. Qin Sheng was not worthy of her. Today, in the Qin family's Sihiyuan, there was a distinguished guest, who was also Qin Chang'an's acquaintance. He was the director of the Chang'an group, the man called Sixth Brother by Qin Chang'an and Zhaoanji. The summer rain had not arrived and the cool breeze was blowing. In the yard, two men of about the same age were drinking erguatu and talking cheerfully, but every word was mixed with the shadow of a sword. They were not as calm as they looked on the surface, and the atmosphere was not so harmonious. Except for the two men, there was no one else in the whole yard. The bodyguards and servants of the Qin family were all forbidden to enter. Only Gongsun stood at the door of the main hall to serve them. Qin Chang'an drank a cup of wine to drown his sorrows, and said in a sad and funny tone, "Sixth brother, we have known each other for decades. I followed you since we were children. Do you really want to force my brother to this step?" During this period, Qin Chang'an's hair was getting whiter and whiter. In the past, when his hair was a little gray, he would dye it. Recently, he did not even have time to do so, so he showed his true colors. Therefore, when people saw the current Qin Chang'an, they would sigh that this once arrogant man was really old. The old man, who was a few years older than Qin Chang'an and would be 70 years old after the Spring Festival, let out a long sigh and said, "Chang'an, do you really think that I, your brother, forced you to do this? Sixth brother, I know what you are thinking. But has it really come to this? If you are willing to go through hardships together, you will not be in this situation now," Qin Chang'an replied with a snort. Brother Six shook his head helplessly and said, "Chang'an, for any of us, this is the best ending. You have to be considerate of us. It's not that we don't want to do it, but what do you think will happen if we do it?" "I don't know. I only know that you want to abandon the rook to save the king, and let me clean up this mess. I have done my best. I am the one who bears all the hardships, and I am the one who will be the scapegoat in the end. What do you want me to think?" Qin Chang'an laughed. Sixth brother squinted and said, "Don't we want to do it? If we don't want to do it, we may not be able to survive until now. We have been working hard at the beginning, and no one is willing to give up all of this. But what is the result? The more we challenge the bottom line of the higher-ups, the more difficult our situation is. That is why we have today's ending." I am very disappointed, Qin Chang'an said with a bitter smile. Everything that had come to this point was not what they wanted to see. But when it really came to this, they could only consider their own position and interests. When the tree falls, the monkeys scatter. If they did not want to be crushed to death, they could only think of ways to save themselves. That was why sixth brother made such a choice. If we really want to blame someone, we can only blame ourselves for developing too crazily. Now that we have become the target of everyone, do you think it is possible for us to land safely? No one can resist the general trend. We can only go with the flow. It is obvious that the higher-ups want to kill the chicken to scare the monkey. If we still want to resist stubbornly, the result will be total annihilation. We will have nothing left. When sixth brother said these words, he was also very sincere. But these words were no longer important, so it did not mean that he would continue to do so. Qin Chang'an sneered and said, "If they can make it, why can't I? Because you are Qin Chang'an, and because you are standing much higher than them. Let me say something unpleasant, do you also want to die a violent death like that person?" Sixth brother's expression changed slightly, and he said very seriously. Today, he had come to find Qin Chang'an, which represented their final showdown. If Qin Chang'an still wanted to persist to the end, then they really could not blame him. Qin Chang'an's expression changed instantly. He stood up abruptly and said, "Sixth brother, are you threatening me?" Sixth brother shook his head and smiled bitterly. He stood up slowly and patted Qin Chang'an's shoulder. He said, "Chang'an, don't be so sensitive. How can I threaten you? Moreover, I am not that kind of person. I am just saying the worst-case scenario so that you can be prepared." Qin Chang'an stared at this big brother, who had been unreliable in the past. In the end, he did not say a word. He just turned directly to the main hall, and then said to Gongsun, "See the guest out." Gongsun walked over somewhat awkwardly and said to sixth brother, "Sixth brother, I am sorry. Let me see you out." They shed all pretenses of cordiality. Sixth brother stood there and looked at Qin Chang'an, who had already gone far away. He pondered for a few seconds. He did not expect that Qin Chang'an would do this. Why did he have to do this? Everyone thought that this was the best ending, but why did he not admit it? Did it really become the worst ending? For everyone except Qin Chang'an, it was the best ending. However, no matter how domineering sixth brother was, he would not do this. After all, after so many years of relationship, it really could not go that far. But it did not mean that others would not do this. Everyone knew that the Chang'an Group had been selling their assets recently, especially those overseas assets that they had forcefully bought. Many people also knew that the China Banking and Insurance Regulatory Commission had been keeping a close eye on the Chang'an Group's banking and insurance asset. Especially today, the central bank had criticized some problems of the Chang'an Group, especially the transfer of assets. Therefore, the Chang'an Group and Qin Chang'an were pushed to the forefront again. In the end, Brother Six still left. He did not look for Qin Chang'an to discuss anything with him. After he left, the storm, which had been brewing for a long time, finally arrived. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. Qin Chang'an, who was sitting in the study, lit a cigarette. However, he did not take a puff for a long time. In the temple on Mount Wutai, which used to be extremely shabby and was only slightly renovated now, the heavy rain also hit. The old monk, who had hidden his name, was chanting Buddhist scriptures. But the lightning and thunder outside had already covered his voice. There was a loud bang. Suddenly, an extremely ear-piercing muffled thunder resounded in the sky, resounding through the whole earth and frightening many people. The Buddha beads in the old monk's hand were broken. Chapter 660. The vixen. This massive downpour had engulfed the entire northern China region. The sky was covered by dark clouds, making it extremely gloomy. Everyone's mood was a little heavy. It was estimated that many cities' municipal systems would be paralyzed again. Who knew how many people would not be able to return home tonight? The rain was getting heavier and heavier, forming a thick curtain of rain that covered the sky. The old monk in the shabby temple suddenly felt a little heavy after his Buddha beads broke. This was not a good sign. The old monk seemed to feel that an uninvited guest had come. He did not pick up the Buddha beads. He slowly got up and walked to the door of the main hall. The rain was too heavy and the visibility was very low. The old monk could not see the strange man who walked into the temple alone with an umbrella. In the end, he smiled bitterly and shook his head helplessly. He had been away from the world for so many years, but it seemed that he could not escape the karma at all. It was good to be pure and to cultivate in seclusion. It was too difficult to be alone. You did not get involved in karma, but karma came for you. How could you solve the problem? Continue to run away from everything and live a secluded life of cultivation, or give up the ascetic meditation that he had cultivated for decades and go back to the world to join in the evil. One flower, one world. One leaf, one bodhi. Every choice had a different karma. Every choice was a different world. But there was only one choice in life, and only one result could be seen. Outside the temple, 2 SUVs that came from afar were surrounded by a curtain of rain. Everyone else was already hiding in the cars. The old man who was holding the umbrella walked inside unhurriedly. Even though he was holding the umbrella, the heavy rain drenched his clothes and shoes. The little monk at the entrance of the temple hurriedly went forward and bowed. "Benefactor, it's such a heavy rain. Are you looking for someone or taking shelter from the rain?" In the side hall of the temple, after hearing the noise outside, the head monk opened his eyes slightly and then closed them again. He turned a deaf ear to what was happening outside. It seemed that he was already used to it and had a premonition of many things. "I'm looking for someone to take shelter from the rain," the man whose face was covered by the umbrella replied in a very deep voice. However, the man's legs were not nimble, and he seemed to be old. The little monk was a little confused, but he could only continue to ask, "Benefactor, who are you looking for?" "Qin Chongxing." The man said the real name of the old monk in the main hall straightforwardly. The little monk knew it was the old monk's real name, but the old monk had refused many people, so he was about to decline politely. Unexpectedly, the man did not care whether the little monk agreed or not and went straight inside. The little monk was a little anxious. He hurriedly followed and shouted, "Benefactor, hey, 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 I haven't let you in yet. How can you do this?" The temple wasn't big. Hence, when the old monk, who had already walked out of the main hall, saw this scene, he immediately waved his hand at the little monk, indicating that there was no need for him to bother. Only then did the little monk mumble a few words and leave. The man holding the umbrella stopped outside the main hall. He kept a distance of 2 meters from Qin Chang'an. He did not walk up the stairs, nor did he lift the umbrella. The man in the rain asked in a deep voice, "It's been more than 20 years. Haven't you had enough of such a life?" "This is my life, so how can I have enough?" the old monk said calmly. However, he was still thinking about the Buddhist bead breaking and his head hurt. "Do you think I don't know what others don't know? Have you really been cultivating in seclusion for 20 years? Even if I believe you, I won't believe the old master." "It's up to you whether you believe me or not," the old monk said in the same tone. The man with the umbrella suddenly said, "Chongxing, it's time to come out of seclusion. Don't let the Qin family repeat the same mistakes. Don't forget what the old master told you." "It's not time yet," Qin Chongxing replied. When the prayer beads broke, he knew that some things couldn't be calculated against the old man. All of this was destined many years ago. The man with the umbrella smiled and said nothing, as if he had gotten the answer he deserved. Then he turned around and left with a smile. He came in a hurry and left in a hurry. As for who he was, no one knew. Undercurrents were surging in Beijing, and everything was unpredictable. In Shanghai, The most direct confrontation was to see who was more powerful. After seeing Shui Ku and Gu Yongning's embarrassed look, Yan Chaozong really wanted to laugh, but he held it back. These two rich playboys had never been treated like this before. It was so horrible that they probably didn't want to go out for a while. Therefore, Yan Chaozong could also feel the anger in the hearts of these two people. Now, they just lacked a reasonable reason. If they really found out that it was Qin Shing's side who made the move, then it was estimated that their revenge would be even more ferocious. Yan Chaozong could not wait for them to fight. It would be better if they could turn the world upside down. Old Yan, you're the local tyrant in Shanghai. I have limited resources here. Help me find a way, even if you have to use special means. You must find out who the F***CK came to Detroit, Shueku shouted loudly. Yan Chaozong said calmly, Don't worry, I'm already taking action. I won't let you down. Shueku said again, Qin Shing, it had better not be you. Otherwise, I will never let you go. Let's see who will laugh in the end. Gu Yongning didn't say anything. He felt that it was most likely Qin Shing. Now they were just being unreasonable. If they really found evidence, it would be interesting. Qin Shing didn't bother to think about what they were thinking. He dared to do this time because he was not afraid of the consequences. After leaving the hospital, Qin Shing went directly to the company. There were a lot of things waiting for him to settle. However, as soon as he arrived at the company, he received a piece of bad news. That was, the board of directors in Beijing sent a young woman in her 30s to be responsible for the reorganization of the Shanghai company. She was also Qin Shing's assistant. At the same time, she was also to monitor whether Qin Shing had any unreasonable or illegal operations in the process of reorganization. Qin Shing originally thought that she was a helper, but Zhong Shan told him that this woman came with bad intentions. Obviously, she was looking for trouble. They had gone over several times. Qin Shing more or less understood what was going on. He estimated that this was not the intention of Qin Chang'an, but the intention of some hostile forces who didn't want to see him go too smoothly. Although she was a woman, if she stood on the opposite side of him, Qin Shing would not be polite. He would go back the way he came. Just as Qin Shing sat in the office, Yan Pan had just sent the backlog of documents over. This woman walked into the office. She was not bad-looking, dressed in jewelry, and had a good figure. However, she had a coquettish aura, which made people unable to look at her directly. Qin Shing really wondered how she had climbed to that position. Oh, Director Qin, I finally see you. I've been in Shanghai for a few days, but I haven't seen you show up. Didn't the board of directors inform you that I'm coming? Or do you have something against me and don't want to see me? We can have a good chat. The woman called Fang Fei walked in front of Qin Shing with cat-like step. Yan Pan felt a little disgusted when she swayed her buttocks. However, for the other men in the company, it was a feast for the eyes. The woman seemed to be doing it on purpose. This was originally her advantage. Qin Shing squinted and said, Do we know each other? Then he shouted at Yan Pan, who is this woman? Do you have an appointment? Fang Fei said a lot, but was rebutted by Qin Shing with such a simple sentence. Qin Shing directly showed his attitude. Don't play tricks in my territory, I won't fall for it. Yan Pan was very cooperative and said, Director Qin, I forgot to tell you, this is Miss Fang Fei sent by the Beijing Board of Directors. Zhong Shan, who stood at the door and did not come in, laughed happily. Fang Fei could point fingers in front of these people, but if she dared to mess around in front of Qin Shing would definitely make her suffer. After all, Qin Shing was the group's director and the crown prince. Who did she think she was? If Fang Fei only had this little bit of ability, she would not have been sent to Shanghai to stir up trouble. It should be known that this appointment was the result of the open and secret struggle of the board of directors. Even Qin Chang'an could only nod his head. Otherwise, it would only let those directors and shareholders think that the Chang'an Group was his family's world. Therefore, Fong Fei laughed out loud. Her chest was even more limitless. Who asked her to dress so sexily? A low-cut V-neck top and a tight skirt perfectly showed off her body advantage. It was estimated that many young people in the company had fallen head over heels for her. Oh, Director Chin, you really know how to joke. I guess you have been too busy recently, so I didn't want to disturb you. Now you should know who I am, right? Fong Fei leaned over Qin Shing's desk, revealing a large area of snow-white chest, and said with smiling eyes. If Qin Shing did not have the self-control, he was afraid that he would have already fallen for her. However, in terms of women, Qin Shing had already established an invincible golden body. What kind of demons and ghosts had he not seen? Therefore, Qin Shing did not hide it. He stared at Fong Fei's chest unscrupulously and said lecherously, "So that's how it is. I almost forgot about this. Sister Fong should be much bigger than me. Yes, I think it should be very big. It's not too much for me to call you Sister Fong, right?" Qin Shing was blatantly flirting with her. Fong Fei was afraid that Qin Shing would not take the bait. The more Qin Shing acted like this, the happier she was. Someone had already said that if she could make Qin Shing fall for her, he would directly give her a villa worth 20 million. This temptation was big enough, so she made up her mind. Fong Fei covered her mouth and laughed. She deliberately let her chest surge and said, "Then I won't call you Director Qin. It's too formal. I'll call you brother. As long as Sister Fong is happy." Qin Shing laughed and said. Fong Fei said happily, "Oh, brother, you really know how to talk. Let's not talk about work today. Brother, do you have time tonight? Sister will treat you to a meal." There would be more opportunities if they had more contact. Therefore, Fong Fei took the initiative to invite him. If they drank too much, there would be more opportunities. She did not believe that Qin Shing would not give her face. However, Qin Shing did not give her face and replied, "Oh, sister, I don't think I can today. There are too many things recently. After these 2 days, I will treat you, sister. Is that okay?" Fong Fei's face changed slightly. No matter how nice it sounded, it was nothing without practical action. However, since Qin Shing had already said so, if she continued to insist, it would be a little too enthusiastic. Therefore, Fong Fei smiled and said, "Then I will listen to brother." Qin Shing nodded and lowered his head to look at the documents. Fong Fei knew that he meant to send her off. She exhaled and said, "Then brother, do what you need to do. I will look for you later. I hope we can cooperate well in the future." After saying that, Fong Fei turned around and left. The sound of her high heels was crisp and sweet. With this ability, it would be a bit of a waste if she did not become a model. After Fong Fei left, Qin Shing raised his head. The conversation just now really made him feel disgusted, not to mention Yen Pan and Zhong Shan. Yen Pan was directly called a vixen. Qin Shing laughed. He was afraid that there would be a lot of crossfire with Yen Pan in the future, because they were not the same kind of people. Zhong Shan said disapprovingly, "She is not friendly." Qin Shing sneered and said, "She is just a small character. If she finds trouble with you in the future, directly push all the blame to me. Let me fight with her." Chapter 661. To lose one's senses. Qin Shing was so busy and tired recently that he didn't receive many calls. Even if he saw them, he would forget to return them, let alone WeChat messages. No wonder he didn't know about it. After all, his focus was on the hospital. First, Xingjing suddenly resigned, and Beijing quickly agreed. Then, Fong Fei parachuted into Shanghai. Qin Shing would never believe that there were no internal enemies. When the disaster came, everyone flew away. Chang'an fell into the most serious crisis in history. At the beginning, when there was a hole in the ship, everyone might work together to get through the crisis. But when the hole became bigger and bigger, to the point where the ship was about to sink, no one was willing to stay on the ship and sink with it. They all tried to think of ways to survive. Most of them wanted to take the ship's assets with them before they left. This was the truth and the reality. Qin Sheng was very clear that the board of directors, which represented the interests of all parties, seemed to be harmonious, but in fact there must be constant fighting. Otherwise there wouldn't be so many problems. However, he didn't know these things yet. Qin Chang'an never intended to tell him, even his sister rarely mentioned it. Of course, Qin Sheng couldn't care or do anything about it. He didn't have the ability to take care of these things, as long as the old man knew. In the office, Qin Sheng was lost in thought. Fang Fei was definitely not as simple as she looked. He didn't believe that this woman only relied on her body to get to this position. Otherwise, she would be parachuted into Shanghai with high hopes, so there would be a lot of trouble. However, Qin Sheng had already thought of a countermeasure. Zhongshan was still in charge of the specific things. When it was time to fight, he could push all the responsibility to him. This woman wouldn't fall out with him. Moreover, he didn't have that ability. It was difficult to make time. Qin Sheng had to work overtime tonight. Yan Pan and Zhongshan were used to it. Anyway, when Qin Sheng left, they would leave. After night fell, the neon lights of these buildings in Lujiazui lit up the night sky as if it were daytime. Most of the buildings were still brightly lit. If one wanted to stand on this land, how could it be possible without putting in several times the effort of ordinary people? After working continuously for a few hours, Qin Sheng finally got up and took a break. Yan Pan made him a cup of coffee to refresh him. Otherwise, Qin Sheng would not be able to hold on. If he were to sleep now without thinking about anything, he could probably sleep for 2 days and 2 nights. Holding the coffee in his hand, he ended the call with Lin Su. However, his thoughts were on Changbaji and the rest. He wondered how they were doing. Xueku and Gu Yongning stopped there. After all, too many people were involved. They would deal with them when they had enough time. They would deal with the Yen family first. Back on Chongming Island, Changbaji and Yang Dainiu had been guarding the farmhouse for a few days now, but there was no sign of activity from those people. They ate, drank, defecated, and slept inside. They could not just barge in, could they? According to the information provided by Bao Fan, there were a total of 5 extraordinary martial artists inside, including Gu Xiaobo. If they just rushed in like this, it would be strange if they didn't turn the place upside down. At that time, no one would want to see the commotion. Therefore, they could only split up and attack, and the easiest one to attack was naturally Gu Xiaobo. Since Gu Xiaobo's betrayal, he had been living a free and easy life. If not for Hao Lei, they probably wouldn't have attacked that woman. However, since Gu Xiaobo was involved in this matter, he couldn't blame them for not following the rules. Of course, they had a bottom line. In a car, Changbaji looked at the time and said to Yang Dainiu, "Dainiu, it's almost time for you to go. They've already taken action. I'll inform you as soon as I get the news." Yang Dainiu had been suffering in this desolate place for a few days. He had already cursed Gu Xiaobo thousands of times. Moreover, this guy was the culprit who killed Gu Qingyang. Today, he was going to kill this evil for his sect. "Then I'll wait for senior uncle's news," Yang Dainiu said with a smile. Then, he got out of the car slowly. In the Xintiandi shopping center in Shanghai, a woman in a maternity dress was strolling alone in the stores. Most of the stores she went to were related to babies. Sometimes, she stopped and lingered. Sometimes, she talked and laughed with the shop assistants. It seemed that she didn't have any pressure at all. Originally, the woman was very beautiful. After she was pregnant, she became more elegant. Every time she went to a store, the shop assistants would praise her beauty and so on. The woman also enjoyed this kind of praise. Now, she didn't have many thoughts. She just waited for the birth of the baby in her belly quietly. Now, she had a nanny and a driver to take care of her every day. Apart from going shopping, she would go to concerts or watch plays. When she was in a bad mood, she would ask some friends to come to her house to chat and make fun of them. She had clothes to wear and food to eat. Every ordinary woman would envy such a comfortable life. However, what kind of life had she been living a year ago? She rented a single apartment with all kinds of people. Every day, she slept during the day and went to work at night. She left at 6 o'clock in the evening and went home at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning with exhaustion and the smell of alcohol. Sometimes she even got drunk. The most important thing was that she had to deal with all kinds of different men at work. It was fine if she met a man who was pleasing to the eye or polite. If she met a man who was extremely annoying, she would be really unlucky. She had long been tired of that kind of life, but she couldn't do anything to change it, because this world was very realistic. It was difficult to do anything without money, let alone a girl like her. If she didn't have the ability and still wanted to earn more money, she naturally had to sacrifice something. How could she let everything go as she wished? After all, in today's society, ordinary men were more difficult to earn money, let alone a woman like her who had nothing but beauty. However, although she went to work there, she had never been in public. This was the only thing she could leave for herself. Otherwise, she was afraid that she would completely degenerate and eventually lose herself. Then, unexpectedly, when she met the man named Gu Xiaobo, the trajectory of her life was changed. She didn't have to go to work anymore. She didn't have to deal with those men anymore. She could live and fall in love like a normal person every day. Until now, she still didn't understand why such an outstanding man liked her. This made her very puzzled at the beginning. After all, there were many women who were more beautiful than her in that place. Moreover, he must have seen other women who were more outstanding and more beautiful. More importantly, her identity was her biggest pain point. It was an unavoidable fact. However, he liked her so much and began to pursue her crazily. In the end, she could only nod and agree because she was also a little tired. She wanted to find a man who really liked her to rely on. Moreover, this man had status, ability, and a certain financial foundation. It turned out that her vision was not wrong. Not to mention how good this man was to her, he completely spoiled her. As long as it was within the scope of his ability, he could almost satisfy her. Secondly, as the man's career continued to develop, her life also became better and better. When did she ever want to have such a life in Shanghai? Therefore, she was very satisfied. She now wanted to give birth to a child for him and live a life of supporting her husband and children. This should be her life for the rest of her life. Sometimes, she would even think about whether it was the setbacks and hardships in the first half of her life that allowed her to accumulate the luck and fortune she had today. It was already too late, and she was a little tired from shopping, so she prepared to go home to rest. Otherwise, Gu Xiaobo would definitely be angry when he called. She knew that Gu Xiaobo had been busy and tired recently, so she didn't want to worry too much. She called the driver, who was waiting for her by the roadside. As soon as she left the baby shop and was about to go out, she felt that something was wrong. It was as if a man had been following her. She had noticed it when she was in the shop in front of her. The woman frowned slightly, feeling a little uneasy. She quickly walked down the escalator, but the man was still following her. This made her more and more nervous. Did she meet some bad guy? Therefore, she quickened her pace, thinking that everything would be fine as long as she got in the car, even if the man kept following her. After getting in the car, the woman let out a long sigh of relief. She didn't know when she had started sweating profusely. The driver looked at her from the rearview mirror and asked if she was okay. She was afraid that the driver would tell Gu Xiaobo and he would be worried again, so she smiled and said that she was fine. Maybe she was too tired. On the way back, the woman didn't think much about it. After all, she had met such a wretched man when she was in Hangzhou before. Maybe it was just a coincidence today. Not long after, the driver sent her to the gate of the community. She smiled and thanked him, then got out of the car with her things. She had already forgotten about what had happened just now. She was thinking about watching an old movie that she liked at night. However, when she walked to the gate of the community, she suddenly found that the man who had followed her in the shopping mall was actually standing there, staring at her with a wretched smile on his face. The woman was startled, and the things in her hands fell to the ground. She almost cried out loud. Seeing her like this, the smile on the man's face became wider. The woman was a little panicked. After coming to her senses, she quickly picked up her things and walked into the community quickly. She didn't dare to look at the man again. When she walked into the community for a certain distance, she thought she would be safe. However, when she inadvertently turned around, she found that the man was still following her. This time, she was completely panicked. She almost trotted into the building where she was, and quickly pressed the elevator to go upstairs, for fear that the man would follow her. When she went home and put down her things, the first thing she did was to call Gu Xiaobo. She was too scared. If it wasn't for Gu Xiaobo, she probably wouldn't dare to sleep tonight. In the farmhouse on Chongming Island, when Gu Xiaobo received the woman's call, his whole face changed instantly. He was not afraid of anything, not even death. The only thing he was afraid of was the woman and the child in her belly. Therefore, after comforting the woman, Gu Xiaobo immediately drove back to the city. Chapter 662. It was finally here. What Gu Xiaobo was most afraid of had happened. Yan Chaozong could use this woman to threaten him in the past. Now Qin Xing might also use this woman to threaten him. This was his only weakness in this world. Therefore, he had never let this woman get in touch with his current friends, in order to protect her better. Now this woman was pregnant with his child, which made Gu Xiaobo more and more worried. Gu Xiaobo had never been afraid of paying the price for the mistakes he had made in the past, nor was he afraid of death. He had long been prepared for this. If he was lucky enough not to die this time, he would leave Shanghai with this woman and find a strange small city to live a carefree life. Then he would hide all his past and slowly wait for his child to grow up. But he also knew that this possibility was very small. Anyway, Gu Xiaobo only had one bottom line, that was, he could die, but nothing could happen to this woman and his child. So after receiving the woman's call, Gu Xiaobo immediately panicked. Of course, he knew what was going on. Obviously, this woman had been discovered by Qin Xing. Except for Qin Xing, there could be no one else. Therefore, Gu Xiaobo drove to the city without hesitation. After all, the woman was pregnant. Once she was surprised, any accident could happen. Gu Xiaobo didn't want to see the worst result. When Gu Xiaobo returned to the city, Song Ryu had also arrived in Shanghai. Qin Xing was still working overtime in the office of the World Financial Center. Almost everyone in the company didn't leave. Everyone knew that this restructuring was stressful, but it was also an opportunity. If they performed well, they were likely to be promoted. Fang Fei had left. She didn't come to Shanghai to work overtime. She just wanted to monitor Qin Xing or drag him down by the way. For Song Ryu, it was very easy to find Qin Xing. It was nothing more than a few phone calls. Besides, she could directly ask Qin Ran, but she didn't do so. When Yen Pan walked into the office and told Qin Xing that a lady named Song Ryu was looking for him at the front desk, Qin Xing was stunned for a moment. Didn't Song Ryu go back to Beijing? Why did she suddenly appear in Shanghai? After Qin Xing came to his senses, he immediately got up and went to the front desk to pick up Song Ryu. He always felt that Song Ryu suddenly appeared in Shanghai and suddenly looked for him. He must have something to tell her. Otherwise, why would she even call him? At the front desk of Qin Xing's company, Song Ryu, who only had her bag with her, went straight to Qin Xing's company after getting off the plane. She was wearing a printed chiffon dress, looking as pure and charming as ever. The two beauties at the front desk whispered to each other, saying that this lady was really beautiful and had a kind of ethereal aura. They didn't know what her relationship with Chairman Qin was, but they had already seen Chairman Qin's real girlfriend, who was also their former colleague, Lin Su. In the beginning, everyone was still guessing in private. They said that after Lin Su came to the company, so many colleagues pursued her, but she was indifferent. It turned out that she had hooked up with the group's young master. They didn't know when she became famous. Almost all the female colleagues were jealous of her. Later, people didn't know who said that Lin Su had been the young master's girlfriend for a long time. They had been dating for a long time, and Lin Su had come to the company to help the young lady. Moreover, Lin Su was the young lady of Ningbo's Lin Group. She was not an ordinary office worker like everyone had guessed at the beginning. At this time, people suddenly understood why the two of them were together. It turned out that they were a perfect match for each other. Therefore, people instantly felt balanced in their hearts. They didn't envy, jealousy, or hate them anymore. They only regretted that they were not born in a rich family. See, human nature was so simple. If Lin Su was like them, they would feel unbalanced in their hearts. But after knowing that Lin Su was the young lady of a rich family, they immediately felt balanced. Song Ryu had nothing to do, so she looked at some of the designs at the front desk. She didn't know whether it was right or wrong to suddenly come to Shanghai, but if she didn't do this, she would feel somewhat uneasy. When Qin Xing walked out, Song Ryu was in a daze. Qin Xing quickly walked over and frowned. "Ryu, why are you here?" Song Ryu came to her senses and said nervously, "Why can't I be here?" Qin Xing didn't know what to ask, so he had to say, "Let's talk in my office." Qin Xing took Song Ryu to his office. On the way, the colleagues who worked overtime all paid attention to Song Ryu. After all, Song Ryu was very attractive. Besides, who didn't like beautiful women? Like those at the front desk, these people were also guessing Song Ryu's identity. Some of them even made a bet in private, of course, daring not to let others know. Song Ryu seemed to be used to this. Her eyes were as clear as water. She didn't feel embarrassed or flustered at all. She just followed Qin Xing and walked forward. After entering the office, Zhong Shan nodded politely to Song Ryu, and then stood up and left. Yen Pan poured a glass of water and left immediately after. At this time, Qin Xing opened his mouth and asked, "Didn't you go back to Beijing? Why did you suddenly come back to Shanghai? What's the matter?" Song Ryu stared at Qin Xing for a while and said, "I know what happened to Hao Lei." Song Ryu directly told Qin Xing the purpose of this trip. Qin Xing didn't understand for a while. It seemed that Hao Lei's matter had nothing to do with Song Ryu. Moreover, Song Ryu didn't know Hao Lei. So, Qin Xing thought for a few seconds and seemed to understand what was going on. He didn't care how Song Ryu found out about it. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Ryu, don't tell me you blame yourself for what happened to Hao Lei. Am I wrong? If I didn't trouble you to pick me up that night, you wouldn't have had any conflict with him. If not, Hao Lei wouldn't have happened." Song Ryu explained in this way. Qin Xing didn't expect that Song Ryu suddenly came to Shanghai for this matter. He didn't know how to explain it to Song Ryu. He couldn't let her think that it had something to do with her. Qin Xing let out a long sigh and paced back and forth, thinking about how to explain it. After a while, he said, "How did you know about it?" Song Ryu shook her head and said, "Don't worry about it. Since you said so, I'll tell you the truth. It's not what you think. I had some conflicts with Xue Ku and Gu Yongning before, but they were all under the table. This time, I just shed all pretense of cordiality. Even if they didn't take the initiative to make trouble for me, I wouldn't have done so, not to mention the old grudges between the Qin family and their families. So it really has nothing to do with you." Qin Xing had to explain in detail so that Song Ryu could be completely relieved. Qin Xing's seriousness seemed to be similar to what Song Husheng had said. Song Ryu couldn't help thinking about it seriously. Maybe she really thought too much. Qin Xing continued to say, "What's more, these are only part of it. There are too many things involved. I can't explain it to you in a short time. Anyway, don't think too much. It definitely has nothing to do with you. Song Ryu frowned and said, Really? Qin Xing nodded solemnly and said, Yes, I don't need to lie to you about these things. I thought you had something to do in Shanghai. Turns out to be this. Okay, I believe you. I'll go to see Hao Lei tomorrow morning, and then go back to Beijing, Song Ryu said calmly. She felt somewhat impulsive. Qin Xing didn't refuse, but he suddenly felt that something was wrong. His relationship with Song Ryu seemed to have changed unconsciously. They didn't stay in the office for long. Qin Xing asked the driver to send Song Ryu to her best friend's place. When Qin Xing came back from the elevator with Song Ryu, Lin Su walked out of the elevator with the lunchbox in her hand. If Song Hushing knew about it, he would probably be half dead with anger. The two beauties at the front desk were also thinking that it would be even more interesting if that beauty had met Qin Xing's real girlfriend. However, it was just their bad taste. Lin Su stopped Qin Xing. Qin Xing looked at the tired Lin Su and said worriedly, It's so late. Why don't you go home and rest? Why are you here? I can't sleep at home. I don't know what time you'll be back, so I brought you some supper, Lin Su said with a smile, holding the lunchbox in her hand. Qin Sheng was very touched. Thank you. On Chongming Island, at this moment, a life-and-death chase was going on. Not long after Gu Xiaobo left the farmhouse, Yang Dania's car directly followed him. After passing 2 crossings, he began to chase Gu Xiaobo's car at full speed. After a while, Yang Dania caught up with Gu Xiaobo's car. After all, it was absolutely true that he had competed with professional racers. During this period, Qin Sheng had verified his skills. After Yang Dania's car drove side by side with Gu Xiaobo's car, Yang Dania casually glanced at Gu Xiaobo and then crashed into him without hesitation. Bang! Gu Xiaobo's car was almost knocked off the road. Fortunately, Gu Xiaobo's reaction was very fast. He subconsciously held the steering wheel and did not let the car go out of control. Gu Xiaobo did not notice it at first. At this moment, his mind was focused on his wife and child at home. On his way back, he made 2 more phone calls, asking about the current situation and whether the man who had been following her had appeared again. The woman said in fear, I don't know. I don't dare to go out and see. Therefore, Gu Xiaobo could only speed up and rush back. Yang Dania's crash directly woke Gu Xiaobo up. At first, Gu Xiaobo thought it was a normal car accident. At first, when he controlled the car, he found that the car next to him had crashed into him again, and it was very determined. At this moment, Gu Xiaobo finally understood that it was definitely not a coincidence that the car was coming for him. Then, Gu Xiaobo seemed to understand the logic behind it. Why was the woman being followed? Why was someone coming for him the moment he left the farmhouse? Obviously, everything was prepared. Then, who could it be? Gu Xiaobo did not have to think to know that apart from Qin Xing, who else could it be? Chapter 663. Never regret. I recommend a book about urban systems. It's very cool to read. It's called Urban God Level Superman. Everyone can check it out. Gu Xiaobo had been waiting for this day. When he knew that Qin Xing and Chang Baji were not dead, he knew that this day would come sooner or later. It was just a matter of time. Now it finally came. To be honest, Gu Xiaobo hated himself now. In the past, he was frivolous and didn't have any expectations for the future. He thought that it was enough to live a good life without anyone giving him any pressure. He lived a carefree life and didn't want to be rich. But what about him now? He became more and more taciturn. Except for that woman and the child in her belly, he had no interest in anything else. Every day, he was like a walking corpse, muddling along. It was as if he knew where he belonged and there was nothing to worry about. Of course, the thing that he hated the most was that he had become a dog of the Yin family. A dog that bit whoever it saw. This was not what he had hoped for. Of course, he was also hoping for a fluke. Why was he hoping for a fluke? It was because of that woman and the child in her womb. He felt that as long as he fought with his life on the line, he might be able to survive. At that time, he would be able to change his life. However, he also knew that this type of hope was extremely slim, and right now, it was even more impossible. Taking a step back, he felt that he was satisfied to be able to live until now. When he knew that Qin Shing had returned to Shanghai and had become the young master of the Qin family, he knew that his fate had come to an end. He had been waiting for this day, but it never came. He had had enough of these days of fear, and now he finally didn't have to worry anymore. Yang Dania's car crashed into Gu Xiaobo's car again. Gu Xiaobo was prepared this time. Luckily, his SUV had good performance. Even though it had been hit twice, it did not lose control, and the damage was not too serious. Gu Xiaobo couldn't see clearly who was driving the car. After all, it was late at night, and there were no other cars on this road. It could be said to be a good place to make a move, so he judged that the other party came prepared. Gu Xiaobo knew that he might die, but no one wanted to die. He didn't want to die either. He still wanted to survive the crisis, and then run away with his wife and children. Therefore, Gu Xiaobo sped up and rushed forward, trying to get away from the car next to him. However, he couldn't. Yang Dania's driving skills were too good. Just like that, the two sides went back and forth, colliding several times on the village road. It was like an American-style police chase. If it was in a movie, the audience would definitely be thrilled. Unfortunately, there was no audience at the moment. Yang Dania cast a sidelong glance at Gu Xiaobo, and a mocking smile appeared on his face. He looked down on such a man. What kind of man was he to betray his sect and kill his junior brother for a woman? Yang Dania sped up again and suddenly turned the steering wheel to block Gu Xiaobo's car. He forced Gu Xiaobo to go into the woods by the roadside. At the same time, he tried to control the steering wheel so that he wouldn't be knocked over by Gu Xiaobo. This required skills, so Yang Dania's experience came in handy at this time. Gu Xiaobo realized that he had no hope of getting rid of Yang Dania, so he had to force his way into the bamboo forest. He directly crashed Yang Dania's car into a tree. Yang Xiaobo Gu Yang said of Yang. He Gu, Xia Gu, or he of, come on, let's see who can survive in the end. Gu Xiaobo was most curious about who Qin Shing would send. Was it Uncle Chang or someone else? But no matter who it was, he would not admit defeat and beg for mercy. He would fight to the death. Luckily, only the front of the car had hit the tree, and the airbag had popped out. If the driver had hit the tree, he would have been in trouble. Therefore, at the last moment, Yang Dania controlled the direction of the crash forcefully. Yang Dania's eyes lit up. Yang Dania's eyes lit up. Yang Dania opened the door and got out of the car with difficulty. He walked around the two cars and walked towards Gu Xiaobo. Gu Xiaobo was also walking towards Yang Dania. They met in the blink of an eye. It was raining heavily in the north, but the moon was bright and the stars were sparse in the south. So Gu Xiaobo saw the man in front of him at first sight. When he saw the man's face clearly, he was so shocked that he didn't know what to do. He said in a trembling voice, "Second senior brother." Yang Dania said bluntly, "Yo, you still recognize me, Gu Xiaobo. It's a pity that I don't have a junior brother like you." Gu Xiaobo had actually only met second senior brother a few times, and it was many years ago. He heard more about second senior brother from his senior brothers and master. Second senior brother was the most outstanding disciple taught by master. Later, he heard that second senior brother had traveled around the world. He hadn't seen him for a few years. He didn't expect to see him here today. How could Gu Xiaobo not be shocked? In order to deal with him, even second senior brother came out of the mountain. It could be seen how much they hated him. Perhaps master had already known about it, so he asked second senior brother to get rid of the evil for the sect. However, Gu Xiaobo also felt lucky. No matter how powerful second senior brother was, he was not as powerful as Uncle Chong. If it was Uncle Chong who came, then he wouldn't have much hope to leave alive. So he still had a chance tonight. Moreover, whether it was second senior brother or Uncle Chong who came, Gu Xiaobo would fight to the death. So it didn't matter. Gu Xiaobo stopped and said self-mockingly, "Second senior brother doesn't recognize me, but I will still recognize second senior brother. Master has already expelled you from the sect, so we have nothing to do with each other now. I am not your second senior brother. Today I only come for one thing, which is to get rid of you, the scum of the sect, and to avenge junior brother Gu Qingyang who has already died." Yang Dania sneered. His attitude was very firm, and there was no room for negotiation. The two cars were almost scrapped. In this wilderness, even if there were cars passing by, they would not dare to stop easily. After all, it was better to avoid trouble. Gu Xiaobo said casually, "So it seems that second senior brother is here to kill me today?" This sentence made Yang Dania confused. "Isn't this nonsense? I made such a big scene, chased you, raced and crashed you. Is it possible that I am here to talk about the old days with you?" So Yang Dania stared at Gu Xiaobo as if he was looking at a fool. He smiled and said, "Then let's talk for a while." Actually, Yang Dania was really funny. If ordinary people heard this sentence, they would probably burst out laughing. However, Gu Xiaobo was not in the mood. He squinted his eyes and said, "Second senior brother, do you really want to fight?" Yang Dania knew that Gu Xiaobo was already prepared. So he did not say any nonsense and went straight to Gu Xiaobo. Gu Xiaobo said thoughtfully, "It is said that second senior brother is the most powerful disciple that senior brother has ever taught. Then let me see whether second senior brother is worthy of his reputation." Before Gu Xiaobo's voice died away, Yang Daniu, who did not like to talk nonsense, had already rushed to Gu Xiaobo's front. If it could be solved by fighting, then don't talk. Moreover, he hoped to end it as soon as possible. Yang Dania's aura was like a rainbow. He felt that he had been holding back for a long time. He wanted to kill Gu Xiaobo directly. Gu Xiaobo knew that his strength might not be as good as Yang Dania's. However, his mentality of seeking death to survive would definitely make him unleash his greatest potential. Otherwise, he could only wait for death. So this was a battle of life and death where the disparity in strength was not big. In the blink of an eye, the atmosphere changed from calm to tense. Yang Daniu, who took the initiative to attack, kicked at Gu Xiaobo's shoulder. Gu Xiaobo bent down and dodged it calmly. Yang Daniu followed up with a roundhouse kick, which went straight to Gu Xiaobo's face. Gu Xiaobo had no choice but to step back. Yang Daniu did not give up. He approached Gu Xiaobo and directly punched at him. Gu Xiaobo could only try his best to defend. He did not dare to take the initiative to attack. He tried his best to figure out Yang Dania's strength and his moves first. Then, he would wait for an opportunity to take action. Yang Dania was unreasonable. He even scolded, "Gu Xiaobo, is this all you have? If you have the ability, fight back. Let me see where you get the courage to betray your master." Upon hearing this, Gu Xiaobo was indeed a little angry. "Motherf *Ker, even if I am wrong, I don't need you to fight with me. If you have the ability, kill me." He roared and pushed Yang Dania's knee away with force. Taking advantage of this free time, he stepped on the broken tire on the right side of the car and punched at Yang Daniu. This punch could be said to be all the pressure that Gu Xiaobo had accumulated during this period. He was really too depressed and needed to vent his anger. Yang Dania did not care about it. He just stretched out his arm casually to block it. However, only then did he feel that Yang Dania's strength was so great that it was much stronger than he had imagined. Before he came back to his senses, Gu Xiaobo followed up with a series of attacks. Every time, Gu Xiaobo's momentum was to kill 10,000 of the enemies and 8,000 of his own. It meant that even if he died, he would drag Yang Dainyu down with him. After Yang Dainyu took a few steps back, he said loudly, "Interesting. You did not disappoint me first. Then, I will let you die in peace today." Gu Xiaobo needed to vent his anger. His strength had increased greatly, and Yang Dainya's fighting spirit was also stimulated. The two of them did not care about anything anymore. They directly started to attack each other in the most overbearing way. Gu Xiaobo resisted Yang Dainya's wave after wave of counterattack. Of course, he had already suffered a lot of losses. The number of times he was hit became more and more, and he even fell to the ground twice. Yang Dainyu did not dare to let his guard down. All these years, he had always been very careful. He would not underestimate any opponent because he did not know when he would fall. After all, the martial world was dangerous, and people's hearts were even more unpredictable. This was the experience that he had accumulated after suffering a lot of losses. Although Yang Dainya's strength was stronger, Gu Xiaobo seemed to have taken some medicine today. He was more powerful than usual. Moreover, during this period of time, Gu Xiaobo had known that such a day would come. Therefore, he had been constantly becoming stronger. Therefore, Yang Dainyu also suffered a lot of losses. It was just that he was slightly better than Gu Xiaobo. Once again, Gu Xiaobo used a trick of destroying indiscriminately. When he was hit by Yang Dainyu and sent flying, he also kicked Yang Dainyu's shoulder. The two of them flew backward at the same time. Blood flowed out from the corner of Gu Xiaobo's mouth. His face was even more terrible. There were a few abrasions on his face. He casually wiped his face and looked even more ferocious. Yang Dainya's side was almost the same. His clothes and pants were torn, and there were a few cuts on them. His shoulder and ribs were also injured. In the car, Gu Xiaobo's phone had already rang several times. The woman was somewhat worried about Gu Xiaobo, so she kept calling him. However, no one answered. The more it was like this, the more worried she was. Just now, she asked the housekeeper to go downstairs to have a look. The man who had been following her had already disappeared. Perhaps it was a false alarm. Therefore, she was worried that Gu Xiaobo had come here from afar. What if there was an accident on the way? Therefore, she planned to tell him not to come back. However, no matter how hard she tried, she could not get through to him. Outside the farmhouse, Chang Baji was talking to Bao Fan on the phone. Bao Fan asked if Yang Dainyu had made any progress. Before the fight, Chang Baji had already informed Bao Fan, because they had to clean up the mess later and control the matter within the scope. Bao Fan did not know Yang Dainya's strength, so he asked doubtfully, "Can Yang Dainyu handle it?" Chang Baji was silent for a moment and said, "Don't worry. Gu Xiaobo is definitely not Yang Dainyu's opponent. However, knowing that he will definitely die, Gu Xiaobo will definitely try his best. Naturally, Yang Dainyu will not gain any advantage." Since Chang Baji had already said so, Bao Fan did not think much about it. He replied, "Then I will wait for your news." At the scene of the collision, Gu Xiaobo, who was in a desperate fight, was in a bad situation. His face was somewhat pale. He had used up too much of his strength, and the breath he had been holding up all the time was already somewhat relaxed. Yang Dainyu gradually gained the upper hand. This time, he kicked Gu Xiaobo away. However, Gu Xiaobo could not do anything and did not gain any advantage. The result seemed to be fixed. It was only a matter of time. Yang Dainyu asked casually, "Gu Xiaobo, do you regret falling into such a situation?" Gu Xiaobo climbed up from the ground, clenched his teeth, and rushed over again. At the same time, he shouted, "I never regret it." Chapter 664. Fate Makes Fools of Men. Gu Xiaobo was like an arrow at the end of its flight. It was impossible for him to kill Yang Dainyu. Even though he had been improving his strength recently, the gap of strength could not be made up in just a few months. Just like how one could only know the importance of talent after hard work. Sometimes people had to accept their fate. Gu Xiaobo had always been clear that he would be killed by Qin Shing sooner or later. However, he always had a fluke mentality. That was why he chose to go all the way so that he could have a chance to survive. However, at this moment, all his fluke and hope had been destroyed. Yang Daniu would not give him such a chance. Gu Xiaobo rushed over again with the mentality of destroying everything indiscriminately. As soon as he arrived, he punched several times consecutively. It seemed to be very lethal, which made Yang Daniu a little surprised. Perhaps this was the last radiance of the setting sun before death. Over the years, Yang Daniu had experienced too many things. He had struggled in the swamp at the bottom and seen the scenery and exaggeration at the top. He had also experienced many moments of life and death like tonight. Every time, he could persist until the end. It might be a fluke or luck, but after so many times, it showed his strength. Yang Daniu avoided Gu Xiaobo's attack. This time, he did not give Gu Xiaobo a chance to die together with him. He kept retreating to avoid Gu Xiaobo's attack and tried to defend in a way that would not be at a disadvantage. However, Yang Daniu was still hit by Gu Xiaobo's head. Gu Xiaobo seemed to be telling Yang Daniu, "I don't care if you are second senior brother or anyone else. If you don't let me live, I will not let you live well. Let's die together." Gu Xiaobo hit Yang Daniu's chest with his head. Yang Daniu clenched his teeth and rubbed his chest. It was really painful. He finally understood why Uncle Chang sent him here. It was not only to let him clean up the sect, but also because Gu Xiaobo's strength was really good. Besides him, the most excellent disciple, Gu Xiaobo and Gu Qingyang were the disciples that their master valued more. Otherwise, how could they follow Uncle Chang to go out of the mountain? "Come on, second senior brother. You are just SOSO. Gu Xiaobo shouted crazily. Yang Daniu stared at Gu Xiaobo fiercely. Gu Xiaobo had really irritated him this time. How could such an unrepentant beast be qualified to live in this world? In that case, Yang Daniu should kowtow to junior brother Gu Qingyang and apologize. Yang Daniu did not want to give Gu Xiaobo any chance. He said angrily, "You are courting death." Hence, Yang Daniu, who had completely unleashed his power, charged towards Gu Xiaobo with a ferocious look. Compared to Gu Xiaobo's aura just now, it was not an exaggeration to say that it was as powerful as a thunderbolt. His lightning-fast attack was mixed with an absolute suppression of strength. Even though Gu Xiaobo knew Yang Daniu's tricks, Yang Daniu's power was too strong. In addition, he was already at the end of his rope. They were not on the same level at all. Then, the result was that Gu Xiaobo was forced to retreat by Yang Daniu's punches and kick. He was injured everywhere. In the end, he didn't even have the ability to defend. He was directly kicked in the head by Yang Daniu and flew out. This time, Gu Xiaobo struggled to get up, but he could not. He could only lie on the ground like a dead dog. Yang Daniu walked over slowly and stepped on Gu Xiaobo's body. He stared at Gu Xiaobo coldly, without any emotion, as if it had nothing to do with him. This was Yang Daniu's true appearance. Yang Daniu, who looked like a hooligan, a wretched uncle, and so on, was actually cold and inhuman. All of this was just a disguise for him to fool around in the world. Why did Yang Daniu behave like this? There were several reasons. Firstly, it was his childhood experience. He was an orphan and had no one to rely on. Naturally, he had more experience than others. Secondly, during the period of time when Yang Daniu was apprenticed to a master in Tianmu Mountain, Chang Baji's senior apprentice brother had profound attainments in the cultivation of the mind. Yang Daniu looked like a big and burly man, but he was very talented in this aspect. It was just like his talent in martial arts, which was innate. Therefore, those thoughts of Taoism made him even more so. Thirdly, when he had been traveling all these years, he had been to so many places and so many cities. He had experienced too much and seen too much of the dark side of society. As a result, the coldness in his bones had once again been deeply rooted. Therefore, if his master hadn't called him personally to come back to help, with Yang Dainya's temper, he wouldn't have come back except to send his master off. In this way, Yang Dainyu and Changbaji were somewhat similar. However, Changbaji was more like the mortal world. Many of Yang Dainyu's things were a disguise. Do you regret it? Yang Dainyu asked again. He didn't believe that Gu Xiaobo could be so stubborn. Gu Xiaobo, whose face was covered in blood, laughed crazily. It seemed that he was laughing at Yang Dainyu. However, he couldn't provoke Yang Dainyu at all. Therefore, he laughed and said, "Senior fellow apprentice, you are really boring. I have said that I don't regret it. I really don't. I will pay back what I owe you in my next life. But I really don't regret it." Although Yang Dainyu hated this guy, he still had to say, "Gu Xiaobo, you have guts. Ha ha ha, senior fellow apprentice, send me on my way. I have been waiting for this day for a long time. It is my blessing to die in your hands." Gu Xiaobo closed his eyes, somewhat relieved. However, he was thinking about the woman and the child in her belly. If she could not see him again, what would she do? Would she go to find him? Would she gradually forget him? Would she tell her future child who her father was? Ha ha ha, I am going to die soon. What is the point of thinking about these? Anyway, I will not know anything after I die. As long as she and the child live well, I can do whatever I want. Fortunately, he had left his child in this world. At least, he could tell others that he had been to this world in the future. Just when Gu Xiaobo was letting his imagination run wild, Yang Dainyu had already taken action quietly. Gu Xiaobo's vision turned black and he passed out completely. Outside the farmhouse, Changbaji finally received Yang Dainyu's call. Although he believed that with Yang Dainyu's help, there would definitely be no accidents, it was inevitable that he would be worried after such a long time had passed. Now that he finally received Yang Dainyu's call, he was completely relieved. Therefore, he immediately informed Bao Fan to clean up the mess. He asked the others to continue watching over here and inform him if there was any news. In a residential area in Jing'an, among the thousands of lights, every light was shining on the hearts of those who had not gone home yet. Among them, there was a light that was lit for Gu Xiaobo. However, Gu Xiaobo could not come back anymore. The woman had already made countless calls and almost called the police. However, there was still no news about Gu Xiaobo. This made her start to let her imagination run wild. Did something really happen to him? In the end, the woman really had no choice but to call Feng He. Although she was a little afraid of this man, she could not care less about it now. Feng He picked up the phone impatiently. The woman told him the reason while trembling. After listening, Feng He's expression changed slightly. He said that he would find a way to contact Gu Xiaobo and inform her if there was any news. After that, he hung up the phone. Then, Feng He called Gu Xiaobo's several mobile phones. However, there was still no news. Feng He realized that something might have happened. In the office of the World International Financial Center, Qin Xing, Zhong Shan, and the others continued to work overtime after having supper. Lin Su did not go home but accompanied Qin Xing in the office. Anyway, she had already met these people, so she did not care what the others in the company thought. In the end, when Lin Su was a little tired, she chatted with Yen Pan. Occasionally, they talked about Yen Pan's boyfriend. Yen Pan started to complain to her. Lin Su also took the opportunity to enlighten Yen Pan. The two of them chatted to their heart's content. Yen Pan did not expect Qin Xing's real girlfriend to be so amiable and approachable. She did not have the unruly and arrogant temperament of a rich girl at all. Instead, she was more like a girl next door. The two of them talked and laughed. At this time, Qin Xing received a call from Changbaji, who told him that Gu Xiaobo had been arrested. What should he do now? At that time, Changbaji told Yang Dainyu that it would be best if they could catch Gu Xiaobo alive. If not, they should kill him on the spot. They could never let him go. Fortunately, Yang Dainyu got Gu Xiaobo alive. In this case, they would meet Gu Xiaobo again. Qin Shing frowned and said, "Where?" "I'll go there now." Chang Baji told Qin Shing that they were on their way back to the city. At the same time, he told Qin Shing where they would meet later. After finalizing some details, he hung up the phone. After hanging up the phone, Qin Shing stood up slowly and said to Zhongshan, "Lao Zhong, let's call it a day. It's getting late. Let's go home and have a rest. We'll continue tomorrow. I have something to do, so I have to go now." Zhongshan didn't know what was going on, but he knew that Qin Shing had been troubled by all kinds of things recently, especially Hao Lei's matter. Hearing the conversation, Lin Su quickly walked over and asked, "What's wrong?" Qin Shing hugged Lin Su's shoulder and said, "It's getting late. I'll send you home first. Lao Chong has something to do. I have to go and deal with it." Lin Su was worried and said, "Be careful. It's nothing. It's just a small matter. Don't worry. I'll go back early after I finish my work. Don't wait for me. Go to sleep when you get home." Qin Shing smiled and said. Lin Su nodded silently. Then, several bodyguards escorted Qin Shing and Lin Su to leave the company and go back to Lujiazui Central apartment. This time, several cars directly drove into the underground garage of the community. Qin Shing sent Lin Su home personally and then left. In the underground garage, Qin Shing, who was cautious, changed to another car. At the same time, they would split into two groups. At that time, the two cars would take a detour. In this way, they could prevent being followed. After all, Gu Xiaobo's life would be decided tonight. It was not good to leave any evidence, especially Qin Shing now. An hour later, Qin Shing appeared in a courtyard in the suburbs. It was a smooth journey and they did not encounter any accident. Maybe they were fully prepared. In the courtyard, there was no one except Chang Baji, Bao Fan, and Yang Dainyu. Bao Fan was so careful to prevent the news from leaking out. After the bodyguards sent Qin Shing home, they left. They would come back to pick Qin Shing up when the time came. "He's inside," Chang Baji said calmly. Qin Shing nodded slightly. Then, he walked to Yang Dainyu and said, "Dainyu, you've worked hard tonight." Yang Dainyu smiled and did not say anything, because it was too pretentious. Moreover, of course, he had worked hard tonight. He was injured in many places. Fortunately, they were all minor injuries and did not hurt his muscles or bones. After entering the room, Qin Shing saw Gu Xiaobo, who was tied up in the corner. Miserable, embarrassed, pitiful, sad. Qin Shing had too many adjectives to describe Gu Xiaobo at the moment. This was the first time they met after half a year. Chapter 665. That must be it. Yang Dainya's most important task this time was to clean up the traitors for the sect. Now he had accomplished this task. Senior Uncle Chang had asked him to keep Gu Xiaobo alive if he could, but not to kill him directly. Now he had kept Gu Xiaobo alive. As for how to deal with it later, it was Qin Shing's business. However, Yang Dainyu felt that Qin Shing would definitely not let Gu Xiaobo go. According to his understanding of Qin Shing would not do something like returning good for evil. Yang Dainyu had already dealt with the wounds. He just needed to apply some ointment on other parts of the body. He had suffered too much and suffered too many injuries. This was really not a big deal. Bao Fan had arranged people to keep watch outside the yard. If there were any strangers approaching, they would naturally be alerted. In the room, Qin Shing stood in front of Gu Xiaobo and sighed with emotion. There were 3 other people standing behind him. Bao Fan did not know Gu Xiaobo, so he naturally did not feel anything. Needless to say about Yang Dainyu, there was only Chang Baji left. Chang Baji had already seen Gu Xiaobo before Qin Shing came. However, he did not wake Gu Xiaobo up. He was just a little disappointed. After all, he was the one who brought Gu Xiaobo and Gu Qingyang out. Now Gu Qingyang was dead and Gu Xiaobo was in such a state. If he did not bring them out at that time, perhaps these things would not have happened. Chang Baji did not blame himself. He just sighed with emotion. After all, everyone made their own choices in life. No one could be blamed for what they did and they had to pay the price. Compared to Chang Baji, who was calm, Qin Xing was more emotional. The memory of Gu Xiaobo and Gu Qingyang following him in Hangzhou was like yesterday. However, there were only memories left. Now Gu Qingyang died to protect him, and Gu Xiaobo betrayed him and ended up in such a state. Qin Xing was thinking, if Gu Xiaobo did not betray him, what would have happened? Back then, they had escaped from Hangzhou safely. As long as they held on for another month, he would have returned to Beijing and become the Qin Xing that he was today. If they had followed him today, they might not have achieved meteoric success, but at least they would have a bright future. Even he, Gu Xiaobo, would definitely have a much better life than he was in the Yan family now. However, there was no if. All this was Gu Xiaobo's fault. He even caused Gu Qingyang's death. Therefore, Qin Xing was very resentful towards Gu Xiaobo. After standing in front of Gu Xiaobo for a long time, Qin Xing said, "Wake him up." Yang Dainiu immediately took a basin of water that had been prepared by the side and splashed it on Gu Xiaobo's face. Gu Xiaobo, who was about to lose consciousness, opened his eyes in a daze. When he saw Qin Xing and Chang Baji standing in front of him, Gu Xiaobo laughed at himself. He did not feel guilty or blamed himself at all. He faced them calmly. "Brother Qin, Marshal Uncle Chang, long time no see," Gu Xiaobo said in a weak voice. His face and tone were very calm. He looked straight at Qin Xing and Chang Baji and did not avoid their eyes at all. Chang Baji didn't say anything. Just like Yang Dainiu, his eyes were very cold. Only someone who was extremely disappointed in someone would have such an expression. Gu Xiaobo's calmness made Qin Xing somewhat uncomfortable. He frowned and said, "Xiaobo, have you thought about the consequences today?" Gu Xiaobo laughed and said, "Brother Qin, I thought that when we met again, no matter what the situation was, you would scold or beat me first. I didn't expect that you would be so polite. It's not good for you to be like this." Qin Xing replied directly, "What's the use? Do I still need it?" Gu Xiaobo smiled bitterly. He was not embarrassed at all, and was not afraid at all. He replied, "I have thought about it. Why didn't I think about it? I am not a big shot who is not afraid of anything. Since I was sure that you were not dead, I knew that such a day would come sooner or later. I have been waiting for this day all the time. Although I wanted to be lucky, after all, who wants to die? I know that the hope is slim. Now, you have made me completely give up the idea." In the end, Gu Xiaobo let out a long sigh and said, "It's pretty good. You seem to be very relaxed. But I guess that the reason why you don't want to die is that you can't bear to leave that woman and the child in her belly." Qin Xing sneered and said in a threatening tone. This was Gu Xiaobo's only flaw. Consequently, after hearing Qin Xing's words, Gu Xiaobo's expression changed instantly. He stared at Qin Xing for a while, and then he laughed and said, "Brother Qin, you don't have to threaten me. I know that you are not that kind of person. After all, I have been following you for so long. I know you more or less." Qin Xing squatted down and reached out his hand to wipe off the blood at the corner of Gu Xiaobo's mouth. He said, "Do you really know me? Do you really think that I will not hurt them? You, Gu Xiaobo, betrayed me for that woman. You killed Gu Qingyang and almost got me killed. I hate you to the core. How can I not cut the weeds and eliminate the roots?" Gu Xiaobo confirmed that Qin Xing was not joking. His expression became somewhat ferocious. He struggled to move forward, as if he wanted to eat Qin Xing. He clenched his teeth and seemed to want to say something cruel, such as, "If you dare to hurt them, I will not let you off even if I become a ghost." Unfortunately, he did not say it in the end. All of a sudden, Gu Xiaobo seemed to be completely relaxed. He said in a tone that seemed to be begging for mercy, "Brother Qin, I will take responsibility for what I have done. These things are all done by me. You can do whatever you want to me. Please let them go. They are innocent." Qin Shing said disdainfully, "Are you qualified to negotiate with me?" Gu Xiaobo was like a fish on the chopping block. Now Gu Xiaobo was just a powerless prisoner. As a dying man, how could he bargain with Qin Shing? It was just a fool's talk. It was Qin Shing's business to deal with that woman and that child. He could not do anything about it. Therefore, after thinking it through, Gu Xiaobo gave up completely and did not bother to say anything else. Maybe it was because he was about to die that his consciousness was higher than many people. Or maybe it was because the Taoist ideas that he had learned from his master when he was young played an important role at this time. Forget it. I can't even take care of myself. How can I care about them? Besides, after I die, I don't know what will happen to them. Let's leave it to fate. Gu Xiaobo directly stepped back and said, as if a dead pig was not afraid of boiling water. He was almost waiting for death. The more he behaved like this, the angrier Qin Shing was. Qin Shing said with a gloomy face, "In this case, I think there is nothing to talk about. Then I will send you to hell." Gu Xiaobo closed his eyes as if he had accepted his fate. "Master Qingyang, Senior Uncle Chang, Brother Qin, I owe you. If there is a chance, I will pay you back in my next life." Qin Shing's heart had been covered by those dark sides. He forcibly restrained his emotional fluctuations, turned around and said, "Send him to hell." After saying that, Qin Shing strode out. After he went out, he gasped in the yard and lit a cigarette silently. As for how they would deal with Gu Xiaobo, he did not care at all. Qin Shing could not understand. He treated Gu Xiaobo as his brothers in the beginning. Later, Gu Xiaobo betrayed him because of a woman. He could understand it. After all, many people could not resist beauty at all. It was the most difficult for them to endure beauty. Otherwise, there would not be so many emperors who would give up the whole country for beauty. However, Qin Shing could not understand why Gu Xiaobo did so many bad things. In the end, he did not regret or feel guilty at all. He did not care what they said or did. Bao Fan and Yang Dainyu took care of the rest. Chang Baji came out soon. Seeing Qin Shing smoking, Chang Baji walked over slowly. He patted Qin Shing's shoulder and said, "Don't think too much. It is not worth it." Qin Shing smiled bitterly and said calmly, "Let's go back." Indeed, for these people who were not worth it, let them go with the wind. In life, people should cherish those who were worth it. Gu Xiaobo disappeared from this world, just like that. As Gu Xiaobo said, Qin Shing was destined not to do anything to the woman and the child. He was not such a person, and he would not change because of Gu Xiaobo's provocation. After going back, Qin Shing did not sleep for the whole night. He still could not calm down. The woman who had been waiting for Gu Xiaobo to come home also did not sleep this night. Feng He looked for Gu Xiaobo for the whole night. He could not get in touch with Gu Xiaobo, no matter how hard he tried. After dawn, he gave up completely. After all, after knowing the ins and outs of the whole thing, Feng He had roughly guessed some things. In Yen Chaozong's office in the Yen family's building, Feng He was reporting what had happened last night to Yen Chaozong. Regarding Gu Xiaobo's disappearance, Feng He was not emotional at all. It seemed that even if Gu Xiaobo was dead, he was dead. Anyway, it was just a matter of time. Yen Chaozong was surprised and said, "Missing?" Feng He nodded and said, "After he left Chongming Island last night, I couldn't get in touch with him at all. Something must have happened. I guess it should be Qin Shing who did it. So I'm afraid that Gu Xiaobo is already dead." Yen Chaozong looked very serious. Previously, he was still thinking whether Qin Shing planned the accident between Xue Ku and Gu Yongning. After what happened to Gu Xiaobo last night, Yen Chaozong did not need to guess anymore. It must be Qin Shing. However, He did not expect that Qin Shing's counterattack would be so quick and sharp. Qin Shing started to counterattack, Yan Chaozong said quietly. First, Shui Ku and Gu Yongning, then Gu Xiaobo. Then, it must be us next. Feng He said meaningfully, Young master, you said that Shui Ku and Gu Yongning's car accident was also planned by Qin Shing? Aren't they a little too crazy? If they really died in the car accident that night, wouldn't Qin Shing get into big trouble? You think too little of Qin Shing and the Qin family. If he dares to do this, he must have a backup plan, Yan Chaozong judged. Feng He replied, then, should we be careful next? According to young master, once Gu Xiaobo is dead, the next thing will definitely be us. Yan Chaozong said disapprovingly, what will come eventually. We can't hide, nor can we escape. Moreover, we are not necessarily afraid of him now. Young master, we can't wait for them to take action. Why don't we take the initiative to attack? Feng He suggested. As Yan Chaozong's confidant and incompetent advisor, Feng He was very smart. Yan Chaozong sneered and said, that's for sure. Chapter 666. You're not qualified. Yan Chaozong was not stupid. On the contrary, he was very smart. Otherwise, how could he stand out among the younger generation of the Yan family and be chosen as the future successor? He was very clear about his relationship with Shui Ku and Gu Yongning. Allies were allies, but he had to figure out his own position. Otherwise, he would be betrayed without knowing it. Since it was you who caused the trouble, Qin Shing started to settle the score. You can't let me take the blame, right? That would be too hurtful. Moreover, Qin Shing had treated you like that. If you didn't continue to fight back, it would not be justifiable. The alliance would inevitably break. Shui Ku and Gu Yongning went south to Shanghai quietly, which made the whole thing suddenly become lively. Qin Shing started to fight back unscrupulously. Yan Chaozong, who had been sneaking up on him, finally had to confront him directly. Moreover, Third Master Wu, who had been staying in Shanghai all the time. Now, Qin Shing was already so busy with the things in Shanghai that he could not care about the things in Beijing at all. Moreover, he could only deal with the things in Shanghai so that he could have more energy to deal with the things in Beijing. In this way, he would no longer have any worries. Yan Chaozong did not go to Shui Ku and Gu Yongning first. Based on his understanding of these two, if they knew that the car accident was caused by Qin Shing, they would definitely not let it go. They would definitely take revenge on Qin Shing. Anyway, when their fathers were fighting, their sons would not stay idle. However, Third Master Wu had been in Shanghai for so long. It seemed that he had nothing to do except to meet his old friends. He had so many subordinates, and it was time to use them. Otherwise, he would really take advantage of others, which would be too comfortable. The place where Yan Chaozong and Third Master Wu met was in Third Master Wu's old foreign-style house in Shanghai. Some people liked Shanghai because they liked the flourishing flowers in Pudong or the Bund. Some people liked Shanghai because they liked the local customs in the alleys. Third Master Wu was the latter. He used to stay in Shanghai for a long time. At that time, Pudong was not developed at all. But it did not mean that Shanghai was not prosperous. This Pearl of the East had already been a prosperous metropolis in the late Qing dynasty. Everyone was willing to come here to make a living. Therefore, the rich people whom Third Master Wu had come into contact with all lived in such old-style houses, which meant that you really had a firm foothold in the Bund, and that represented the foundation of the Bund. As a result, when Third Master Wu became rich later, he immediately bought an old foreign-style house here. The decoration style was the same as that of old Shanghai. At that time, it was not expensive. It was far less expensive than it was today. However, for Third Master Wu, money had already become a number at that time. What he wanted was just nostalgia and a sacrifice to his old ambitions. On the balcony of the second floor, Yan Chaozong and Third Master Wu were sitting opposite each other. A beautiful woman in a Chong Sam was serving tea and water to them. Her well-tailored Chong Sam showed off her perfect figure. She had a voluptuous figure, which made people unable to stop looking at her. In addition, her hair was tied up in a bun. She looked like a woman from Shanghai in the movies. Both Yang Deng and Feng He stood 5 meters away from them. This time, they had nothing to do. It was better for them to stay far away. After all, they were not qualified to listen to the conversation between the big shot. The beautiful woman in the Chong Sam was also standing beside them. They could all smell the faint fragrance on her body. Feng He looked at the beautiful woman in the Chong Sam up and down unscrupulously. His eyes even stopped at the eye-catching place. The beautiful woman in the Chong Sam looked very unhappy. She wanted to kill Feng He. Yang Deng squinted and stared at Feng He. Of course, he knew Feng He. He was just a dog of the Yen family. Moreover, he did not like Feng He at all. If they were not allies now, he would have already attacked Feng He if he dared to be so presumptuous on a normal day. Feng He did not care about Yang Deng at all. He responded to Yang Deng with a very provocative look. The expression on his face said, "What can you do to me? If you can't do it, let's have a fight. If you are so capable, you can do it." At this time, the beautiful woman in the Chong Sam was not involved. On the balcony, Yan Chaozong drank Third Master Wu's tea and said in a low voice, "Third Master, Qin Xing has started to fight. You can't just stand by and watch." Third Master Wu said with a smile, "Chaozong, I have been in this society for so many years. How could I do this kind of thing? If you want me to do anything, just tell me." Yan Chaozong replied with satisfaction, "Ha ha, Third Master, I won't stand on ceremony." After Third Master Wu put down the teacup, he suddenly said, "Chaozong, I am a little confused. Why didn't the elders of your family show up after such a big scene? The elders of the Shui family have come to Shanghai. I have to meet old Master Yan." "Third Master, what do you mean?" Yan Chaozong's expression suddenly changed slightly. That was because he had been handling this matter in private so far. He had not told his family at all, let alone discussed it with them. As for Yan Chaozong, of course, Third Master Wu appreciated this young man very much. He also admired Yan Chaozong's ability. However, their opponents now were not only Qin Xing, but also the powerful Qin family and the Zhu family, which might be involved in the Qin family. He agreed to let Yan Chaozong come to Shanghai not because Yan Chaozong had persuaded him, but because the elders of the Shui family had come to see him in person, which represented the attitude of the whole Shui family on this matter. However, Yan Chaozong had been the one who had been making trouble in the Yan family. The elders of the Yan family had not shown up. Third Master Wu was such a person. Even if he wanted to talk about things, he would talk to the big shots of the Yan family. Yan Chaozong was a young man. Third Master Wu was not qualified to talk to him. For example, in the previous incident, it was the elders of the Yan clan who personally came to find him and promised him sufficient benefits before he would help out. Therefore, Third Master Wu did not trust Yan Chaozong now. He had been asking about this matter these days. The elders of the Yan family had not made any moves. If Yan Chaozong really wanted him to help, he had to meet the elders of the Yan family. Otherwise, he would not take the risk. Just like Yan Chaozong was not willing to be the cannon fodder and had to fight for Shui Ku and Gu Yongning, Third Master Wu was the same. Every man for himself. Third Master Wu was very surprised and said, "Chaozong, what do you mean? I think you'd better talk to the elders of your family about some things. After all, the resources you can use are limited. You have to admit it." Yan Chaozong snorted and said, "I represent the whole Yan family. Third Master, you don't trust me?" Third Master Wu chuckled. After so many years, he had experienced all kinds of things. He could not be fooled by others' words. Third Master Wu sneered and said, Chaozong, can you really represent the Yan family? It seems that your grandfather and your second uncle are still alive. Should I visit them directly? Yan Chaozong stopped talking and began to curse Third Master Wu, who was really cunning. However, he could not fall out with him. He had to keep Third Master Wu as his ally. Therefore, Yan Chaozong hesitated for a moment and suddenly laughed. Third Master, you must be joking. I don't know how to be polite. Since you said so, I will go home and talk to the elders. I will hold a banquet for you to be completely relieved. Otherwise, without enough trust, how can we cooperate in the future? Third Master Wu smiled and nodded. That's great. After talking about these things, Yan Chaozong left with Feng He. He did not achieve his purpose and was somewhat disappointed. Before Feng He left, he provoked Yang Deng and the beauty in Chong Sam again. Yang Deng had already clenched his fists and was about to fight. However, he did not. He believed that there would always be a chance. After Yan Chaozong left, Third Master Wu slowly stood up and scolded with a smile. You are not qualified to play tricks with me. Wait until you meet the elders of your family. Who do you think you are? Yang Deng did not say anything. He did not care about these things. The beauty in Chong Sam was very unhappy and said, I really want to dig his eyes out. Of course, she was referring to Feng He. Yan Chaozong had seen countless women and was not interested in the beauty in Chong Sam. Yang Deng comforted him and said, If there is a chance in the future, I will help you vent your anger. Third Master Wu seemed to have heard it and said with a smile, Children are playing house. Rui, you are so beautiful, but you don't let others look at you. This shows that you are very charming. The beauty in Chong Sam called Rui instantly smiled and said, Third Master, you also make fun of me. At this time, a servant downstairs ran up and told Third Master Wu that his boss, Wu Yongchuan, was here. Third Master Wu was silent for a moment and said, Let him go back. I am a little tired and want to rest for a while. The servant immediately went downstairs and told Wu Yongchuan. After Wu Yongchuan heard it, he was very unhappy. He sighed and left. However, the resentment in his heart was getting deeper and deeper. After Yan Chaozong left, he went to find Xue Ku and Gu Yongning. Feng He went to meet Gu Xiaobo's girlfriend. Although Gu Xiaobo might be dead, the Yan family would not break their promise to him. They still had this kind of affection. It was nothing more than giving her some money to make her life easier in the future. On the other side, Third Master Wu just entered the bedroom and did not lie down. He received a call from a tycoon in the Bund, whom he had not seen for a long time. The tycoon said that an old friend wanted to meet him and it must be a surprise. He asked him when he was free. Third Master Wu was a little confused. First of all, how did this tycoon in the Bund know that he was going back to Shanghai? Second of all, who was this old friend? No matter how Third Master Wu asked, this tycoon did not say anything. Third Master Wu could not refuse. After all, he had to give face to the tycoon. So he agreed and let the old friend choose the time. Chapter 667. How could he lay his cards on the table? This big boss who wanted to see Third Master Wu was no other than Qin Xing, who was entangled with all kinds of trifles. He had to make such a choice. At least, he had to stabilize Third Master Wu's side. He really did not have much experience in fighting on several fronts. At that time, he would be surrounded by enemies. Qin Xing also understood that he had to stabilize the situation in Shanghai as soon as possible and then go back to Beijing to help the old man through the crisis. No matter how much he could do, as the son of Qin Chang'an, it was still very convenient for him to do many things. Only when the Qin family passed the crisis safely could he have the strength and confidence to settle the score with these people in the Yangtze River Delta. In Jing'an, in the coffee shop opposite the community where Gu Xiaobo's woman lived, Feng He represented the Yan family to meet Gu Xiaobo's woman. They sat opposite each other. The woman was a little restless, and Feng He was even more arrogant. Don't look for him anymore. I guess he is already dead, Feng He said directly. He was not afraid that this woman would be too excited and have an accident. This had nothing to do with him. He was not Gu Xiaobo, so he did not care so much. The woman did not sleep all night. She looked very pale. Hearing this, she was very shocked and did not come to herself for a long time. From her eyes and facial expression, it could be seen how excited she was in her heart. However, she tried her best to control her emotions and did not want Feng He to see too much. Setbacks would make people grow up. Suffering would also make people stronger. This woman had experienced a lot, but Gu Xiaobo's appearance made her not think about those things anymore. Finally, someone could shelter her from the wind and rain. After coming to herself, she bit her lower lip and grabbed her clothes with her hands under the table. Finally, she said in a trembling voice, "Why didn't you call the police? There are many things that can't be solved by calling the police. You still don't understand the rules of the game in this world. Gu Xiaobo is very clear about his ending. He should have expected this day. If he wants to blame someone, he can only blame you. You changed the course of his life," Feng He said disdainfully. If Yan Chaozong had not asked him to come here, he would not have cared about this woman at all. The woman looked confused and said, "Blame me? I don't want to talk nonsense with you. I just came to tell you the truth and make it up to you. At least, this is what I promised Gu Xiaobo. What you should think about now is what you should do in the future. As for the baby in your belly, it's up to you whether you want to abort it or keep it." Feng He snorted. The woman still did not understand. It was as if her world had collapsed in an instant. She muttered to herself, "Why is this happening? The less you know, the better it is for you. Don't court death. I think Gu Xiaobo also thinks so." Feng He reminded him very kindly because he had indeed encountered many such cases. The woman suddenly said with red eyes, "Brother Feng, can you look for him again? I'm sure he won't die. He won't abandon us. Please look for him again." Fortunately, there were not many people in the cafe. If others heard what they said, it was very likely that something bad would happen. Hence, Feng He was very angry. He stared at her with a malicious look and said, "Shut up. I said he's dead. He's dead. If you don't believe me, you can look for him yourself." The woman was frightened by Feng He's sudden anger. She could only sob in a low voice. If Gu Xiaobo was really dead, what would she do in the future? What about the baby? Now you only have one choice, which is to leave Shanghai, go back to your hometown or go somewhere else. To be honest, Shanghai is not suitable for you to stay any longer. Our Yen family will give you 2 million yuan as compensation. This is already what I have fought hard for. It can be considered that our Yen family did not mistreat Gu Xiaobo. Moreover, with Gu Xiaobo's savings, no matter where you go, you should be very comfortable. As for what you do in the future, it's all your business. Or you can go back to your old job." At the end of his words, Feng He was obviously a little humiliating this woman. He really did not know whether it was worth it for Gu Xiaobo to betray Qin Xing for such a prostitute. In the end, he could only say that he deserved it. The woman did not speak. She was a little confused and also a little confused. She had adapted to the life with Gu Xiaobo, but Gu Xiaobo suddenly disappeared. What should she do? She needed to face everything in the future. Feng He did not care whether the woman agreed at all. He stood up directly and said, "I will transfer the money to your account later. If you want to make trouble, I won't stop you. But I advise you, for yourself, for your child, and for Gu Xiaobo, you'd better leave obediently. Otherwise, you won't even have the chance to regret it." After that, Gu Xiaobo stood up directly and was ready to leave. But he hesitated for a while and walked in front of the woman again. He slowly reached out his hand to touch the woman's cheek. In the end, he pinched the woman's chin and said, "You still have a little taste. The woman did not expect Feng He to be like this. When Feng He touched her, her body was obviously a little trembling. But she did not dare to do anything. She could only let Feng He take advantage of her and silently shed tears. If Gu Xiaobo was here, he would definitely not be like this. Feng He was more threatening. He was not so unprincipled. He still had a bottom line. He just hoped that this woman would be obedient, which was also for her own good. After Feng He left, the woman sat there with her mind blank. She could not stop crying. It was very difficult for her to accept the news. She did not believe that Gu Xiaobo was dead at all. She would rather believe that Gu Xiaobo was acting to abandon her. But was it really so? Xueku and Gu Yongning were still recuperating in Xishan. They were completely too ashamed to see others. These days it was finally quiet. The news of their car accident spread like wildfire. Many people called to ask about it, including their families. At present, they were still trying to find the mastermind behind it. No one believed that it was just an accident. Most accidents could be coincidences. Outside by the swimming pool, Yan Chaozong was chatting with Xueku and Gu Yongning. There were several beautiful women swimming in the pool. Their figures and appearance were very good. They were all found by Gu Yongning. As a famous playboy, Gu Yongning had a lot of resources. The two men were staying here. They could not just stare at each other every day. They had to find something to do. Of course, beautiful women were the best way to kill time. Lao Yen, do you mean that this thing must be done by Qin Xing? Xueku said angrily. Yan Chaozong glanced at the bikini beauties in the pool. He turned back to continue drinking juice and said, "What happened last night is basically done by Qin Xing. The two things happened one after another. One was against you, and the other was against me. This must be Qin Xing's revenge and counterattack. Since Qin Xing dared to attack you, he must have arranged all the retreat plans. So no matter how we investigate, we can't find him at all. They are not so stupid." Gu Yongning said indignantly, "I said it was done by Qin Xing. There is no need to guess. Besides him, who else could it be? He is even more ruthless than us." Yan Chaozong continued, "You should feel lucky. I guess Qin Xing dares not kill you. Otherwise, he will have to pay a huge price. For the Qin family now, it will be one disaster after another. Otherwise, you would not have a chance to survive that night." Motherf *Ker, Xueku cursed, because what Yan Chaozong said was right. They had indeed escaped with their lives. Gu Yongning snorted and said, "Lao Xue, what do you think we should do? I don't think we can take this lying down." Gu Yongning instantly thought of what happened in the past. How his uncle was forced to death by Qin Chang'an step by step. This time, he almost died in Qin Xing's hands. He was absolutely irreconcilable with the Qin family. Xueku looked at Yan Chaozong, a strong ally, and said, "Lao Yen, what do you think we should do? Things have come to this point, I can't give you any advice. It depends on your tolerance. Because once you take action, Qin Xing will definitely continue to counterattack. Moreover, at this time I have to protect myself first. Who knows how Qin Xing will deal with me? After all, it was my people who took action," Yan Chaozong said truthfully. His meaning was also very clear. "You do it yourselves. Don't let me be the cannon fodder anymore. I have to defend myself first." Xueku was fine. He did not push him step by step. Instead, he replied, "Let me think about it." Now, Yan Chaozong's mind was on how to tell the truth to his family. Things had come to this point. He was afraid that his family had already heard the news. They did not take the initiative to ask him. It was possible that they were waiting for him to take the initiative to speak, or that things were still within their control. It was a big headache, but he still had to tell the truth. Things had really reached the point where he could not take the lead. If Qin Xing launched an all-out war, with his current resources, if he did not have the full support of his family, it was obvious that he could not resist at all. Gu Xiaobo's matter had come to an end. With Yang Dainya's full effort, Gu Xiaobo finally paid the price for his betrayal. However, Gu Xiaobo's attitude before his death still hurt Qin Sheng very much. Qin Sheng was still so busy. He had to run between the two hospitals and deal with the company's affairs. This was the top priority. As for Shangshan Ruoshui, Qin Sheng could not care about it at all. Therefore, when Mizan called several times to confirm some things, Qin Sheng rejected her and asked her to take her time. Although Gu Xiaobo was already dead, Yang Dainyu did not choose to leave. Under Chang Baji's persuasion, Yang Dainyu chose to stay. He would help Qin Sheng deal with these things before leaving. It could be considered as another kind of life experience. Anyway, Yang Dainyu had already gotten used to this kind of life. On Chongming Island, those people still did not leave the farmhouse. They were like tortoises hiding in their shells. This made Chang Baji and the others very helpless. They could only continue to stay here. However, Bao Fan and Chang Baji still could not come up with a plan on how to deal with the Yen family. Bao Fan meant to directly take action against the elders of the Yen family, which could be considered as knocking on the mountain to warn the tiger. However, Chang Baji still thought that it would be more direct to start with Yen Chaozong first. But currently, it was difficult to find a suitable opportunity. Chapter 668. Full support. In fact, no matter what, Qin Sheng was very clear that the result would be the same. He would have to face the entire Yen family after all. That was the time for the real competition. Qin Sheng was waiting for an opportunity. As long as Yen Chaozong let him seize any opportunity, he would not let Yen Chaozong go. It was time for him to pay his debts. Everything seemed to be calm, but in fact it was already full of fighting. Moreover, many tycoons hiding behind the scenes gradually began to surface. They were all paying attention to what happened in Shanghai and wanted to see who would have the last laugh in the end. Of course, Qin Chang'an was paying attention to Qin Sheng. However, he did not say anything and let Qin Sheng lead the situation. Those big shots were also paying attention to Qin Sheng. They also wanted to know how capable Qin Sheng was. Actually, taking a step back, this was not necessarily a bad thing for Qin Sheng. If he really settled the matter in Shanghai smoothly, he might be recognized by those big shots who were watching from the sidelines. In the end, they might choose to stand on his side. This was also a kind of reward. The Shui family and the Gu family, who already knew that Shui Ku and Gu Yongning had a car accident, were also paying attention to it. They did not dare to intervene. It was not because they were afraid of the Qin family, but because they were in Shanghai. Once they chose to intervene, they were afraid that the Zhu family, which was rooted in Shanghai, would be angry. At that time, the loss would outweigh the gain. How could the elders of the Yen family not know? As Yen Chaozong had guessed, the elders of the Yen family were actually waiting for him to take the initiative to speak. It was also because these things that happened at present were all within their control. Otherwise, they would have called Yen Chaozong back directly. In fact, when Yen Chaozong returned home a few days ago, Old Master Yen and the second elder of the Yen family had already planned to show their card. However, they held back in the end. However, what happened in the past few days began to gradually worry them. Unexpectedly, at this time, Third Master Wu suddenly put pressure on Yen Chaozong, forcing him to take the initiative to go home. The Yen family also had a big villa in Xishan. Usually, only Old Master Yen lived here. Occasionally, the juniors would go back. Therefore, it was actually very close from Shui Ku and Gu Yongning's place, just a few minutes' drive. In the evening, in the dining room of the villa, Yen Chaozong accompanied his grandfather and uncle for dinner. He took the initiative to call second Uncle Yen to say something at night, so second Uncle Yen came back from the city. The three men of different ages in the Yen family represented 3 generations of the Yen family, as well as the past, present, and future of the Yen family. The Yen family had a smooth life for so many years. However, in the past few years, the Yen family had a hard time. They had been suppressed inexplicably. A few months ago, they figured out what was going on. However, Yen Chaozong, the future heir of the Yen clan, had been unable to immerse himself in the Yen clan's business in peace. He had been disturbed by a young man for a few years, and it seemed to have become a demon to him. Previously, the Yen family had tried to take down this young man several times, but they had failed to do so. He always escaped by a fluke and showed up again later. If it were not for the sake of breaking Yen Chaozong's ill-fated relationship with him, Old Master Yen would not have agreed to cooperate with Third Master Wu last time. Who would have thought that after several forces laid out an inescapable net, this young man would still be lucky enough to escape in the end? He was really lucky. What shocked them even more was that, after a few months, this young man had actually turned into the long-lost son of Qin Chang'an, an influential figure in Siju City. Wasn't life very interesting? Suddenly, a comedy was put on for you, but you couldn't laugh no matter how hard you tried. The Yen family had already offended Qin Shing to death. Qin Shing had almost been killed by them twice. Did you think that the Qin family would let the Yen family off easily? That was obviously impossible. Moreover, they already knew that Master Qin was the one behind the Yen family's troubles in the past 2 years. Old Master Yen was not someone to be trifled with. After that, there were only 2 ways in front of the Yen family, which Yen Chaozong had already considered. One was to admit their mistakes as soon as possible. No matter what price they had to pay, as long as the Qin family could let the Yen family off, it would be worth it even if they had to sacrifice Yen Chaozong's life. The second way was to go all out with the Qin family. They would fight to the death with the Qin family and see who would have the last laugh in the end. Moreover, the Qin family was not in a good situation now. It could be said that they were in a precarious situation and could collapse at any time. The Yen family did not mind hitting them when they were down at this time. It would be best to completely cut off this threat. Yen Chaozong chose the second way. But no one knew how the elders of the Yen family would choose. The atmosphere at dinner was very harmonious. The 3 of them talked and laughed. They talked about the interesting things in the family, politics, history, and so on. Neither Old Master Yen nor Second Uncle Yen took the initiative to ask Yen Chaozong what he wanted to say. Moreover, they already knew it. After dinner, Old Master Yen took his son and grandson out for a walk. On the way, they met many acquaintances and greeted each other politely. They all knew Old Master Yen's identity. Moreover, Old Master Yen was very approachable, so they were very polite when they met on normal days. Old Master Yen and Second Uncle Yen still did not ask anything. They just casually strolled and chatted with the evening breeze. They were extremely satisfied and comfortable. But the more they behaved like this, the more uneasy Yen Chaozong was. Therefore, Yen Chaozong could not hold it anymore. He directly said, "Grandpa, Second Uncle, you win. I admit defeat." Old Master Yen laughed and said, "That's all your patience is? I thought you could at least hold it for another half an hour, or at least wait until we get home." Second Uncle Yen was very satisfied and said, "Dad, Chaozong is already very good. I think, if it were someone else, he would not have been able to hold it until now." As soon as Old Master Yen and Second Uncle Yen spoke, Yen Chaozong knew what was going on. Just as he had guessed, they already knew what was going on. They were just waiting for him to show his cards. Yen Chaozong was completely convinced. As expected, the older, the wiser. After all, he, a little fox, was not as good as these 2 old foxes who had been in Jianghu for many years. "Grandpa, I was wrong. I shouldn't have been so stubborn and acted on my own. I didn't discuss it with my family. In the end, I caused such a big trouble." Yen Chaozong's attitude of admitting his mistake was very sincere. He was very humble. Anyway, he had already prepared for the worst, which was to fall out with his family. If his family did not support him, he would fight against Qin Sheng and the Qin family himself. Old Master Yan's manner suddenly changed. He said, "Wrong? Who said you were wrong? If you were wrong, we would not have let you suffer until now. We would have stopped you long ago." Yan Chaozong was very surprised and asked, "Grandpa, what do you mean?" At this time, second Uncle Yen smiled and explained, "What do I mean? Don't you understand what your grandpa means? Of course I support you. Otherwise, I would have broken your legs and handed you over to the Qin family." Yan Chaozong was very surprised and surprised. Old Master Yen continued to say, "The Yen family is not a family that anyone can bully. Moreover, you are my only grandson. If you die, who will inherit the Yen family's business and develop the future of the Yen family? Therefore, no matter what happens, I will protect you. No matter what method I use, I must let you live well." Yan Chaozong asked very calmly, "Grandpa, if you do this, the Yen family will completely offend the Qin family. Aren't you afraid that the Qin family will take revenge on us? At that time, the Yen family may have to pay a price that no one knows if we can bear." Old Master Yen said very bluntly, "If it were in the past, the Yen family would not dare to offend the Qin family. After all, the Qin family is too deep. Not everyone can offend them. But now the Qin family is in a difficult situation. Why should we be afraid of them? It's just that the wall is down. What's more, the Qin family has been messing with the Yen family behind the scenes for the past 2 years. I can't swallow this anger. Moreover, the Qin family has been messing with the Yen family behind the scenes for the past 2 years. I can't swallow this anger. Let's take a step back and ask you to kowtow to the Qin family and apologize. The Yen family can't afford this disgrace." At this moment, Yan Chaozong was moved by his grandpa's words. He did not expect that the result would be like this, which was far beyond his expectation. Yan Chaozong said emotionally, "Grandpa, it's all my fault. If it weren't for me, these things wouldn't have happened," Yan Chaozong said. Old Master Yen snorted and said, "Since my grandpa's time, the Yen family has been through a lot of setbacks and tribulations. No one's life is smooth. Your grandpa, your uncle, and now it's your turn. You don't need to be afraid. As a descendant of the Yen family, no matter what you encounter, don't run away. Hold your head high and stick out your chest. What's more, what you've done is much better than what we expected. We're already very satisfied." Second Uncle Yen also said, "You're a big man. Don't cry like a girl. As a descendant of the Yen family, we must be indomitable." At this time, Old Master Yen said, "I've said what I need to say. Now you can do it boldly. We'll support you fully. When you need us to help, just tell us. As for the rest, you can talk to your second uncle. I won't participate." Yan Chaozong could not help but say with emotion, "Grandpa, thank you." Old Master Yen shook his head and smiled bitterly. "Don't thank me. You're my grandson. If I don't protect you, who else can I protect? Don't let us down. I think as long as you get through this, you'll go faster in the future." Yan Chaozong said firmly, "Grandpa, don't worry. I won't let you down." Old Master Yen smiled and said nothing. Why did he support Yan Chaozong so much? Because as the future successor of the Yen family, if Yan Chaozong chose to lower his head and admit his mistake at this stage, he would definitely not have any great achievements in the future. Therefore, he had to fight with Qin Sheng. If he really lost, it would not be too late to admit his mistake. However, if he won by luck, then Yan Chaozong's achievements in the future would definitely not be low. This was what Old Master Yen expected of his grandson. Chapter 669. Chapter 670. Do you understand me? For anyone, only after climbing over a tall mountain could they see the scenery at a higher place. If they couldn't climb over it, they would only be able to reach that place in their life. Currently, Qin Sheng was the mountain in front of Yan Chaozong. It was a mountain that had troubled Yan Chaozong for several years. It was more like an inner demon in his heart. If he couldn't climb over this mountain, he would naturally suffer a blow. He might become muddle-headed and useless from then on. This was what old Master Yen didn't want to see. After all, his expectations for Yen Chaozong were not limited to this. Therefore, old Master Yen dared to give it a try and let Yen Chaozong fight bravely. He was the only grandson of old Master Yen. He was going to lead the Yen family to create a bright future. He had to get through this. This was also his biggest test. Yen Chaozong, who had been feeling uneasy and dared not tell his family, could only struggle in secret. Today, he finally got the full support of the family. He was in an extremely good mood, as if he was a proud person. After Yen Chaozong sent old Master Yen and second Uncle Yen back to the villa, Yen Chaozong went back to the city. His father had something to talk to him. Yen Chaozong guessed that it was about marriage. After all, his parents had been urging him for a long time. They were even more anxious than old Master Yen. After Yen Chaozong left, old Master Yen and second Uncle Yen sat in the study and chatted without any barriers. The eldest son of the Yen family was like his mother, who was aloof from worldly affairs and obsessed with learning. The second son of the Yen family was more like old Master Yen. The reason why the second son of the Yen family could get to where he was today was that the old master taught him step by step. Old Master Yen was quite satisfied with his second son. Although his second son didn't meet his highest requirements, he had tried his best. However, second Uncle Yen had no son, only 2 daughters. Therefore, all of their hopes could only be placed on Yen Chaozong. Old Master Yen and second Uncle Yen even tried their best to cultivate Yen Chaozong. Yen Chaozong's previous performance had always been very satisfactory. However, until this matter happened, it completely disrupted their rhythm and caused Yen Chaozong to more or less degenerate these few years. Now they had to make a choice. They could either give up on Yen Chaozong or give him their full support. Giving up was equivalent to giving up on all the painstaking efforts he had put in over the years. He would more or less feel some regret and loss. However, it was very difficult for them to find a new successor. Even if they found one, it would be difficult for them to get close to him even though he was still a descendant of the Yen clan. The only advantage was that the Yen clan would not be caught in an unknown storm. There would be no losses if there was no risk. There were 2 possible outcomes for supporting Yen Chaozong with all his might. If he won, Yen Chaozong would be a brand new Yen Chaozong. His abilities and strength would be improved in all aspects. Moreover, he would be recognized by almost everyone. Moreover, he would obtain sufficient resources from this storm, especially the resources from Siju City. In the future, he would also be able to take over all of the Yen clan's connections. This was the best outcome. No matter how much the Yen clan would lose, it would be a gain in the long run. The other outcome was losing. Yen Chaozong might not be able to recover from this setback, and the Yen clan would suffer even greater losses. From then on, they would be reduced to a nobody. Moreover, Yen Chaozong might even die. No matter what price the Yen clan had to pay, they would not be able to protect him. This was the worst outcome. One was the best, and the other was the worst. The Yen clan had chosen to support him with all their might. Naturally, they were taking a risk and gambling. However, why did they have to gamble? Because it was the general trend. The goddess of luck was obviously favoring them. The Qin clan was already in a difficult situation. How could they have the energy to deal with them? They were just an insignificant straw among all the straws that had crushed the Qin clan. Dad, this is really a big gamble. If we lose, the Yen clan might go back decades. Do we really have to gamble like this? Second Uncle Yen asked uncertainly because he wasn't someone who liked to gamble. He liked to scheme and take advantage of the situation. Only by going with the flow would he be able to reap the greatest benefit. Although the Yen clan had enough allies this time, if it was just the Qin clan alone, it would be a challenge of a higher level. Old Master Yan's wrinkled and weathered face was full of determination. He replied, "What else can we do if we don't gamble? We have no other choice. Do you think the Qin clan will let Chaozong go? Obviously, the possibility is very small. Are we going to give up on Chaozong? Obviously, they won't. Then we can only gamble. Moreover, the winning rate is very high now. We may not lose. If we win, everyone will be happy. The Yan clan will then enter a new height. If we lose, we will go back decades. No family can have a smooth life. They always have to experience setbacks in order to reach new height." Second Uncle Yan nodded silently and said, "Dad, it seems that you have thought it through. I've lived my whole life and experienced everything. For the future of the Yan family, it's not a big deal to lose a grandson and go back a few decades. I won't end up begging on the street, right?" Old Master Yan said calmly. Second Uncle Yan smiled bitterly and shook his head. "In this case, let's gamble." At this time, Old Master Yan suddenly said something that no one understood. He murmured to himself, "Moreover, there are some things that I already know." Second Uncle Yan frowned slightly. When he wanted to ask more, the old master had already waved his hand to indicate that he could leave. Second Uncle Yan walked out of the study with doubts. It was already very late when Yan Chaozong returned to the city from Xishan. His parents lived in a high-end villa community in Jing'an. With the financial support of the Qin clan, his father was in charge of a cultural research institution. He had been studying all his life and could be considered as a real cultured person. His mother was born in a rich family. However, his mother's family was no longer what it used to be. Now it was just a second-rate family attached to the Qin clan. Yan Chaozong did not have much contact with them. Now his mother was in charge of the Yan clan's charity work. Compared with his second mother, who was in charge of the financial department in the headquarters of the group, his mother obviously had no say in the family. Yan Chaozong never interfered with his parents' lives, nor did he have any opinions. He felt that it was fine as long as they were happy. As for other things, it was enough for others to handle. Besides, they still had him as their son. This was their greatest asset. "Zong, you haven't been home for dinner for a long time. If you continue to be like this, I will be angry." Yan Chaozong's mother was graceful and elegant. She had maintained herself well. It was obvious that she was born in a rich family and had never suffered. Yan Chaozong held his mother's hand and said, "Mom, Grandpa and second uncle wanted to talk to me tonight. Didn't I tell you about it? I will come back tomorrow night to have dinner with you. By the way, I heard that you liked an old object some time ago. It seems to be an emerald bracelet worn by some Empress Dowager in the Qing dynasty. I will ask someone to send it to you later." Upon hearing this, Yan Chaozong's mother was very happy and said, "Wow, our Zong is so good to me, unlike someone who only knows to deal with those old guys every day. He doesn't even have time to talk to me. I really don't know why I was so blind back then." It was obvious that she was mocking the eldest brother of the Yan clan, who was sitting on the sofa and reading. The eldest brother took off his reading glasses and stared at his wife. He said, "What am I talking to you about? You only know how to buy and buy. Look at the things you have bought. Which ones are useful and which ones have you used?" The two of them began to bicker back and forth. Yan Chaozong did not interrupt, nor would he help either of them. This was their way of life. After all, both of them knew very well that they loved each other deeply. Back then, his father and mother did not get married through a marriage between two families, but through a free relationship. Obviously, Yan Chaozong's father could not win against Yan Chaozong's mother, so he could only vent his anger on Yan Chaozong. He said, "Come here, I want to talk to you." Yan Chaozong walked over unhurriedly and said half-jokingly, "Dad, are you going to introduce me to someone's daughter or relative again? I have said that as long as the old master thinks it's okay, I will meet them." Of course, The eldest brother of the Yen clan was most afraid of the old master of the Yen clan. He said angrily, "Don't use the old master to pressure me. I want to talk to you about something serious." Yen Chaozong's mother was very sensible and said, "You two have a good talk. I will go to the kitchen and ask Sister Song to make soup for you. Drink some later." After Yen Chaozong's mother left, there were only the father and son in the living room. The father and son had never had any dispute. The Yen clan loved this son very much, but he could not do anything about many things. This was because the old master had raised him since he was a child. Sometimes he felt that this son was closer to his brother than to him. However, this was his character, and he did not know how to get close to him. "Dad, what's wrong? What's the matter? Just say it," Yen Chaozong asked directly. He thought that there was something wrong with his father's research institution, and he wanted his help. The eldest brother of the Yen clan frowned and said, "You are not young anymore. It is time for you to get married. How have you been living these 2 years? Although I did not ask, it does not mean that I do not know. You are ruining yourself." "Dad, you don't have to worry about some things. I know what to do. Some roads have to be walked by themselves," Yen Chaozong interrupted his father. He did not want to talk about these things. The eldest brother of the Yen clan continued, "There are some things that I also know. When it is time to lower your head, you have to lower your head. If you take a step back, you will have a bright future. If you continue to struggle like this, I am really afraid that one day you will be gone. Your mother and I only have one son. Do you really want us to send you off?" Yen Chaozong subconsciously understood what was going on. His expression changed instantly and he said, "Dad, tell me the truth. Who told you these things?" The eldest brother of the Yen clan shook his head and said, "Don't ask me who told me this. I will not tell you." Yen Chaozong was a little angry. He had already made up his mind to find out who it was. When the time came, he would definitely not let them go. However, he did not want to argue with his father. He just said, "Dad, this matter is not as simple as you think. I have already discussed it with Grandpa and second uncle. They will tell me what to do. Don't think too much about it." The eldest brother of the Yen clan let out a long sigh and said, "You are my son. How can I not think about it?" Yen Chaozong laughed and said, "What's the use of thinking about it? Do you really understand me?" This sentence directly stunned the eldest brother of the Yen clan. The eldest brother of the Yen clan was instantly speechless. Although they were father and son, sometimes they were even more polite than strangers. Did he really understand this son of his? The eldest brother of the Yen clan wanted to say something, but Yen Chaozong had already stood up and left. He said, "I will go and get some soup for you." The eldest brother of the Yen clan looked helpless, but there was nothing he could do. At this time, his phone received a text message. He slowly picked up the phone and saw that it said, "Hubby, when will you come to see me and my baby?" The eldest brother of the Yen clan looked uncertain. Seeing that his wife had already walked out of the kitchen, he quickly deleted the text message. Chapter 670. Finally awake, every family had their own problems, and it was even more so in the rich and powerful families. Who knew how many dirty and shady secrets were hidden behind the scenes? However, some of them would eventually disappear in the long river of time, and some would eventually be made public. The Yen family's business was the Yen family's business after all. As for what exactly was going on, no one knew. On Qin Sheng's side, he was eating and drinking with Fang Fei, the vixen whom everyone in the company loved and hated at the same time. He had to give her enough face and at least coax her. Otherwise, this woman would definitely cause more trouble in the future. In an exquisite restaurant, Qin Sheng called several executives of the company, who had passed the interview to become members of the restructuring committee, including Xu Yong. Of course, Zhongshan was also present. Fang Fei was more or less unhappy. She originally only wanted to eat alone with Qin Shing, so that she would have a chance. She did not believe that Qin Shing's willpower was so high. She did not have this ability. Sister Fang, I've been too busy these days. I only have the chance to welcome you today. Please don't mind, Qin Shing said politely. Of course, these were just polite words. Everyone was well aware of it. Fang Fei was dressed very sexily tonight. She wore a black camisole with a deep V-neck dress, almost revealing half of her body, which was a feast for the eyes of these men. However, the few people present were very clear that Fang Fei was not easy to deal with. In the end, they stayed away from her and did not seek their own destruction. Fang Fei, who was sitting next to Qin Shing, exuded an enchanting fragrance. She held Qin Shing's hand naturally and said coyly, "Brother, you're too polite. I know you're busy, don't you?" Fang Fei did not care about what others thought of her at all. Over the years, she had long been used to other people's rumors, not to mention that she was a hot topic herself. Qin Shing was afraid that she would use this trick. Everyone else saw it. Even if there was nothing wrong, it could not stop others from speculating. In the end, false rumors could also become true. Qin Shing withdrew his hand calmly and said, "Thank you for your understanding, Sister Fang. The company is now at a critical time of restructuring. Sister Fang, you have to control it in case some people play tricks behind the scenes. This is a big deal for me. If anyone dares to mess around, Sister Fang, just tell me, I will definitely not spare them." Qin Shing was warning Fang Fei, telling her not to mess around. Otherwise, he would definitely deal with her later. Unexpectedly, Fang Fei's response was also very direct. She smiled and said, "My brother, you are the young master of our group, and also the group's director. Who would have the guts to do that? Don't worry, I will definitely help you keep an eye on it. I came to Shanghai for this matter. But how are you going to thank me later?" When she said this, Fang Fei's hand, which was under the table, had unknowingly been placed on Qin Shing's thigh. She wanted to go straight to the point. It had to be said that this woman was a little unscrupulous. Qin Shing was shocked. He had really underestimated Fang Fei. She was completely unscrupulous and dared to act so recklessly under the watchful eyes of the public. Qin Shing quickly grabbed her hand and said, "What does Sister Fang want? At that time, I can make arrangements for Sister Fang, and I guarantee that Sister Fang will be satisfied." The two of them seemed to be flirting with each other. Everyone else saw it, but they were very clear what was going on. "Really?" Fang Fei exhaled and said. She was almost in Qin Shing's arms. Qin Shing more or less regretted giving Fang Fei a welcome dinner. He should have continued to delay it. This was really asking for trouble. Anyway, this could not go on. He had to find a way to deal with Fang Fei, or how to chase her away. Otherwise, who knew what would happen in the future? The more he delayed it, the higher the risk would be. Sister Fang is so charming, how can Chairman Qin let her down? At this time, Xu Yong stood up and took the initiative to help Qin Shing out of the predicament. He smiled and toasted Fang Fei. Fang Fei knew Su Yong's status. Although she was very unhappy, she could only accept it. Only then did Qin Shing relax a little. At this time, the others also came back to their senses and began to toast Fang Fei one after another. In addition to Qin Shing's jesting, the dinner finally continued. The dinner finally came to an end. Qin Shing really could not sit still. He had thought too simply of Fang Fei. This woman was really thick-skinned. Qin Shing almost could not stand it. Fang Fei drank a lot of wine and was already a little drunk. That blurred look was even more coquettish. If it were not for the fact that everyone present was experienced in Jianghu, they might really not be able to stand it. Fang Fei directly leaned on Qin Shing's shoulder and said, "Brother, I haven't had enough yet. Accompany me to another place to drink some more, okay?" Women's coquetry was the most terrible, especially beautiful women's coquetry, especially beautiful women who were interested in you. This was AF** King nuclear weapon. The other men hurriedly retreated, really afraid that they would be involved. Qin Shing only wanted to escape now. This was more strenuous than fighting 300 rounds with anyone. He laughed and said, "Sister Fang, let's continue drinking another day. It's too late now, I have to hurry back. My girlfriend should be checking on me. If she knows that I'm with a great beauty like you, then I'm really finished." Fang Fei only found out that Qin Shing had a girlfriend after coming to Shanghai. She said with a sad face, "Brother already has a girlfriend. Ah, so sad, so sad. Can you bear to leave me like this?" Qin Shing could not stand it anymore. He could only bite the bullet and said, "Xu Yong, arrange for the driver to send Sister Fang back. Be sure to send her home." After that, Qin Shing did not care what Xu Yong thought and directly pushed Fang Fei into Su Yong's arms. Xu Yong looked confused. The look in his eyes seemed to say, "Chairman Qin, you can't trick me like this." Qin Shing responded with a helpless look, "Brother Su, help me in Jianghu." Then, Qin Shing took Zhongshan and left first. If he did not leave now, he was afraid that he would not be able to leave. Who knew what this woman would do next? After getting in the car, Qin Shing said, "Old Zhong, we have to think of a way to deal with Fang Fei. If this goes on, I'm afraid that I can't take it. By then, even if nothing really happened, it will spread everywhere. I'm afraid that her goal will be achieved." Zhongshan squinted and said, "Let me think carefully, what method can we use to hit her?" "I'll leave this to you," Qin Shing said with a bitter smile. Outside the restaurant, after Qin Shing left, Fang Fei seemed to have sobered up in an instant. She stared at Qin Shing's shadow that was getting further away with a playful look. She seemed to be very satisfied with the result tonight, which meant that Qin Shing was not her opponent at all. After all, a young man was a young man. In front of a young woman like her, he could not hold on for long. It was only a matter of time before she took down Qin Shing. At this time, Xu Yong opened his mouth and said, "Sister Fang, let me ask the driver to send you back." Fang Fei, who was already sober, said coldly, "No need, I can take a taxi back myself." After that, Fang Fei walked with elegant steps, swaying her seductive butt and slowly left, leaving behind a few men who had not come back to their senses. Xu Yong was stunned and said, "What the hell? Ha ha ha, Mr. Su, this seductress's target is the crown prince. Of course she will look down on us," an executive next to him explained. Xu Yong then realized that everything just now was all an act. This woman was really scary. Qin Shing had a few meetings in the company in the morning. Fang Fei interrupted him as expected, as if she was deliberately looking for trouble. However, when she was alone with Qin Shing, she would return to her seductress appearance. This made Qin Shing very angry, but there was nothing he could do for the time being. In the afternoon, when Qin Shing was on his way to the hospital, he received a call from Han Bing, saying that Hao Lei had finally woken up. Qin Shing was so excited that he was a little incoherent. He hurriedly asked Yang Dainiu to drive faster and rush to the hospital as fast as possible. After getting out of the car, Qin Shing ran all the way to the ward. Han Bing was feeding Hao Lei. Qin Shing stood at the door of the ward with mixed feelings. She definitely did not know that this feeling was like when Lin Su saw him wake up that year. In the end, Qin Shing slowly walked in front of Hao Lei and laughed foolishly, "Brother." Hao Lei, who was weak and pale, wanted to say something, but was directly stopped by Qin Shing. "Don't say anything, you don't need to say anything. I know. You can rest assured and recuperate in the hospital. Don't think about anything else, I will definitely help you." Hao Lei was a little touched. As a man who had suffered a lot, he still could not help but stare at Qin Shing and nod his head vigorously. Qin Shing did not stay for too long. Hao Lei had just woken up, his body was still too weak. He needed a few days to recover, and then he would have a good talk with Hao Lei. In the corridor outside the ward, Qin Shing looked at the haggard Han Bing and said, "You have worked hard during this period. Why did Qin Shing thank Han Bing? If it was not for Han Bing, no one could really take care of Hao Lei so considerately, saving him a lot of trouble. Han Bing shook her head and said, "You don't need to thank me, these are all what I should do. If it was not for me, Brother Lei would not have been injured." Qin Shing said helplessly, "You are sometimes too stubborn. It has nothing to do with you, don't blame yourself for everything." Han Bing smiled and did not say anything. Even if it was not for her, it was also her duty to take care of Hao Lei. For such a long time, Hao Lei had been protecting her. Now that Hao Lei had fallen, it was time for her to repay him. Qin Shing continued, "You also need to take care of yourself, you have lost a lot of weight. Don't fall down when the time comes, then I will be too busy." Han Bing chuckled and said, "Don't worry, I am not that weak. Since Dad passed away, I have learned to be strong." Qin Shing felt a little sad, but did not know what to say. He could only gently hug Han Bing and said, "No matter what happens, you still have me. I am your family, and I will always protect you." Han Bing still did not speak, because she did not want the relationship between the two of them to be just that of family. This was not what she wanted. But now, she had already seen through many things, so she would just go with the flow. Moreover, Qin Shing already had Lin Su, a girlfriend who was not inferior to her. After leaving the hospital, Qin Shing went to Shangshan Ruoshui, where Xue Qinyan was waiting for him. The meeting with Third Master Wu tonight was originally arranged by Xue Qinyan. The tycoon was the tycoon that Xue Qinyan knew, so Qin Shing had such a chance. Otherwise, Qin Shing was worried that Third Master Wu would not meet him at all, and would not even give him any chance. After all, Third Master Wu had now formed an alliance with Yan Chaozong, and it was possible that he already had a relationship with the Xue family and the Gu family. For a person like Third Master Wu, he would definitely not be a grass on the wall, because it was the most arduous and unrewarding. He would only choose a side, and then go down this road until the end. Obviously, the possibility of Third Master Wu choosing him was very small, almost zero. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.